Hello and welcome to the Select Board meeting for May 19th, 2021. We are calling this meeting to order via Zoom, still under the emergency orders that were put in place due to the COVID pandemic a year ago. These will be releasing soon, and we are having discussions as to when we're going to go back live and how we can still let people participate so that they're all comfortable. Welcome all to the meeting. We will open it up with citizens participation if there's anyone who'd like to participate. Mark, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, good evening all.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Mark.
Congratulations to the remote Rob and Yolanda that made it back again. I see
Thank
Rob's
you.
already being run out of
Thanks,
town.
Mark.
Rob's being run out of town now. That's early. And to the chairman, to Mr. Mignani.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Are you the senior member now, the most likely longest member on the board?
Am I the oldest member of the board?
That's the senior most member.
Senior
Most number of
member.
years.
Tenured?
Yeah.
Tenured member? I'm not sure because Rob ran once before, so I'm not sure if he's has the same amount of years as I have. So it may be a tie with Rob and I.
And that's why he's running out of town, to leave you being longer at the board. Okay, I just wanted to say that, and I know this is going to be a somewhat of a long meeting, and I'm not going to make it any longer. Have fun.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Seeing no one else for citizens participation, and it's not quite time for our first appointment. I will go to the consent agenda. On our consent agenda today, we have accept the regular session minutes for April 21st, 2021. Accept the mental health grant from the state in the amount of $21,000. Accept the recommendation from the Economic Development Advisory Group to award a sign and facade improvement grant to Blush Bouquet for $2,121.57 and declare a 2008 Ford Taurus VIN number FAHP 24W58G170582 as surplus. If I can have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Brandy. We'll do a roll call vote. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell, and Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. And that passes 5-0. Thank you for the passing of the consent agenda. Are we expecting Doug Costello of the Upper Charles Trail to be joining us? Do we know?
Yes.
Are we? Okay. Hold off on that. Let's go into old and new business. We have a few minutes still. We can discuss the request of a letter of support for the 2021 Massworks Grant application. Michael?
So yes, if you recall, last year we applied for another Massworks grant for our downtown project because the bids came in so much higher, and since that time, project costs had escalated even further, and we were unsuccessful in obtaining that. The new Massworks grant round has opened up this year, and it closes, I believe, in mid-June. They're going to use that new one-stop application process.
Yep.
What I would like the board to consider is requesting a letter of support from our legislative delegation for a new application to Massworks. Before I go any further, I do want to point out that our legislative delegation, especially Senator Spilka, was really instrumental in helping us get a Massworks grant for this project previously for $3 million. But again, it's just, the costs have exceeded what we had anticipated. And we talked about that, I think, a couple months ago. So if you're okay with that, I will go ahead and draft one up. And I think just a signature from the chair would be sufficient to send that out.
Sure. Are people okay with that Michael drafts and then I sign?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Okay.
What amount are we asking for?
going to calculate it, but the amount we asked for last year was a little over $3 million. Since that time, we found some reductions that we could pursue to bring down the total project cost. So I anticipate it's going to be in the realm of 2.5 million.
Thank you.
Okay, we still have 10 minutes before our first appointment, which is a legal notice, so we cannot start that before 7:15. The next thing is, are we expecting anyone from the Racial Equity Study Group, Michael, to come speak, or is that going to be you?
I will speak to it, and Jen
Okay.
will add some things to it.
Okay, let's move to that, please, then.
Okay, so if you recall, back in 2020, we created a racial equity steering group to start looking for ways to identify racial disparities in service offerings and just people's perceptions and ideas about race in the community, with the hope that once we can identify what those disparities are and what those perceptions are, if there's any negatives there, we could start working on an action plan to correct those. So it's taken a little while, but since that time, what we've done is we have worked with a couple of different organizations and selected one, that being Suffolk University, to help us with the data collecting aspect of this project. So just like any project, anytime you want to fix something, you want to ascertain what the problems are, and get a real honest appraisal and feedback from people about what those problems are, and then you can start developing a plan to fix it. And so that we're in the process of doing that first step. Again, utilizing Suffolk University, they're going to be facilitating a number of focus groups and a survey. The focus groups, we had initially planned on starting those next week, but I believe we'll probably push it out another week, Jen, just considering the time frame that we have right now, unless you still think the 26th would still be good for the first one. Okay.
Yeah, so the 26th is a Wednesday, so, and then the first week in June, that's scheduled.
And just to refresh everybody's memory, that steering group, again, it's a pretty informal group, consists of Nikita Keegan, KG Narayana, Rabbi Eric Gervis. We did have a young gentleman, EJ Smithers, who was part of us at the very beginning. He has since moved on, and then Jen and myself are part of that as well. So we hope we'll start putting that out. We'll start advertising that out. We encourage everybody to attend, people of color, and then also people, non-people of color, to come and give us their their honest feedback and appraisal of in their experiences of what they've encountered here in Ashland. And again, that is going to run the gamut between their interactions with town departments, the educational system, just general perceptions. It'll be a pretty robust process.
And Michael, when did you say the first meeting was going to happen?
The 26th of May, so next week.
Next Wednesday. And it'll be via Zoom.
We're going to try to balance out an option to do virtual as well as some on-site outside. We just have to solidify the location, and that will be part of our outreach efforts.
Okay, great.
Quick question. Does Makita have the dates for the meetings and stuff? Does she have all that as well? Has that been public?
So we're working in conjunction with her to make sure that it works within everybody's schedule.
Okay.
But the 26th date is on the radar.
Okay. Just because I know tomorrow is an area meeting, and that might be something that would be good to bring up to the group. I can't make the meeting. I have a conflict, but as long as Makita is plugged in and there's folks that can make sure that the group is aware, I think that would be a good thing.
Actually, and I'm not sure if Makita goes to all of those meetings, but Ashley Plate, who's our communications person, actually participates in those meetings. So if Makita doesn't bring it up, we'll make sure that she brings it up as well.
Okay, that'd be good. Thank you.
There's nothing else with that. We still have 5 minutes. I don't know that we're going to get through closing the warrant in that time.
If you'd like, I can give an update on the Rail Transit District / the YMCA,
Sure, let's do that.
if that would be beneficial.
Just jumping all over the agenda tonight.
We are. So I did have the opportunity earlier this week to meet with Rick McPherson and Peter Weisgarber from the YMCA to talk about their planned facility here in Ashland. As everybody could probably expect, the COVID pandemic pushed things out a little bit longer and further away than what we had anticipated. But they did conduct a survey, a community survey amongst the 3 communities that this would serve, which includes Ashland, Holliston, and Hopkinton. And so what they're going to do this summer is they're going to utilize this data to start informing this new schematic design process. You've seen some general conceptual drawings, but they're going to move close to a schematic design. And they'll start increasing their outreach efforts to different people in the community, start getting input and continue to get input and feedback, I should say. From that standpoint, they will go to hopefully complete that schematic design and then get a cost study. And so that moves us into the fall, where hopefully the board, the YMCA board, will approve that feasibility study and it'll take place. And then in winter, we'll start the fundraising aspect of this project. And it will be obviously a full capital campaign that's going to be required to do this. Still looking potentially around a $20 million facility. And so obviously it's a high bar, but something that I think the people in all 3 communities support wholeheartedly. I know we've even got people on this call right now who are, part of the Y board or have been a part of the Metro West Y in many different ways. So we're looking forward to publicizing that a little bit more, that process a little bit more, and getting that new regional facility out in the public sphere.
So can I just, so when you say that they're going to be making it public, what's informing their schematic design, I know that pre-COVID, they had talked about basically presenting the results from the survey back to the community. And I know it's been a really long time since we've all looked at that. So, I'm almost thinking that if they would be willing to still do that, that might be a good interim step, just so it kind of refreshes the memory of what the survey was and how, kind of before we get to a schematic. But, I don't.
Yeah, not to cut you off, but they are planning on doing that.
Okay.
They're going to they're going to talk to, some key stakeholders, and then they're going to bring it back out to the community as well.
Okay. So it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, it is exciting.
Okay.
I think I got us to 7:15.
Anything else on the rail transit?
Unless you have an update on the Upper Charles Trail, Jen, which I don't think you do.
No, not really. So
I believe the easement has been approved, right? Through the Y, that's all set.
The easement has been approved by the Y board. It just now needs to be approved at town meeting.
At our town meeting.
mhm.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. We are at 7:14. I'm going to call that close enough. I'll read this hearing notice and get us to 7:15. Legal notice for the town of Ashland. Notice is hereby given that the select board will conduct a hearing regarding the transfer of stock. The entity is D2 Convenience Inc. D2 Convenience Inc., DBA Easy Convenience Store, 69 Pond Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721. A public hearing will be held on the matter on Wednesday, May 19th, 2021 at 7:15 p.m. Parties wishing to be heard on this matter are invited to attend the public hearing by logging into the Zoom meeting. Interested parties who are unable to attend the hearing may submit written comments to the Select Board's office, Town Hall 101 Main Street, Ashland, Mass. 01721, or by emailing Susan Roby at sroby@ashlandmass.com. Welcome to the hearing. And hold on, I need to find names. So Darshak, I believe.
How are you doing?
Good. And who else is involved that is on my screen?
So Matthew Porter is here. I am the attorney for
Hi,
D2.
Matthew.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so if it's helpful for the board, I could just give a brief summary and then answer any questions from there.
That'd be great.
I am the attorney for D2 Convenience Inc., which does business as Easy Convenience Store in town. This is an internal stock transfer. Darshak Patel, who's with us tonight, is already the 75% shareholder of the corporation. He's buying out his other partner's 25% share to become the 100% shareholder. In addition to that, the shareholder Mahavir Patel, who is being bought out, his 25% will be removed as an officer on the corporation as well. So no major anticipated changes, or really any anticipated changes whatsoever to the operation of the store. Darshak is already the manager on the location. So from a day-to-day operation standpoint, there's really no change here at all. This is a requirement of the ABCC if there's any transfer of stock or change of officer whatsoever.
Okay, good. And Susan, we have all the documentation from our perspective to support this. And have we received any emails either in support or against? No. Okay, great. I'm going to open it to the board for any questions. Joe is shaking his head no. Steve is shaking his head no. Brandy is shaking his head no. Rob, no. Great. Okay, so it feels pretty straightforward. Then I would, we are needing to make a motion to approve this stock sale. If I can get a motion.
Close the hearing. And
Thank
then-
you.
right?
Steve, yep, close the hearing first.
Motion to
Appreciate
close
that.
the hearing.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Steve and a second by Joe. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell, aye. Mitchell,
Aye.
Shearer,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. So we've now closed the hearing. Matthew, was there something else you needed to add?
Yes, so when it goes to a vote, there's actually two different elements to the application. So it would be approving the transfer of stock and then also approving the change of officers of the corporation.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Approving.
So Matthew, would the change of officers be sole owner? Would that
Yeah.
be?
Yeah, well, yeah, on the Secretary of State, so essentially every corporation has, and they can have multiple officers, but they have a president, treasurer, secretary, director. Here, the individual that was being bought out served in a couple of those capacities. So in the end, it'll just be Darshak Patel as the 100% shareholder, and then he'll be the sole president, treasurer, secretary, director.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Hearing, Steve, thank you for that reminder. If I can get the approval to change the ownership of stock.
So moved.
Okay, in a second.
Second.
Thank you, Brandy, and thank you, Joe. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Shear,
Aye.
thank you, and Greaves, aye. So we have approved the change of stock ownership. We now need a motion to approve the change of officers. If I can get a motion to change the officers.
Oh,
So
So
moved.
moved. So moved.
So moved by Steve and Brandy.
I'll second.
Second, thank you. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Shearer, and Greaves, aye. That passes 5-0. So
Thank-
Darshak, congratulations. Matthew, thank you for being here. Good luck being the sole owner, and we appreciate having you in town, and hopefully business is going okay for you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Thank you. Okay, next, do we have Doug yet? Doug? No Doug.
I see him.
Okay. Is Betsy here early? No, not yet. Okay. I'm going to go back to our old and new business, and let's look at closing and posting the warrant for the annual town meeting for June 12th. Michael, if you could take us through that.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. The first thing I want to solidify for everybody, including the board, is the date and time of town meeting. It will be June 12th, which is a Saturday. Originally, we had looked at 1 p.m., but looking at the weather, the decision has been made to change it to 10 a.m. at the high school. currently in the gymnasium. I think the moderator has talked about the possibility of maybe moving that to the auditorium, given the recent restrictions that are being lifted. But as of right now, it will be in the gym so we can get provide a little bit more spacing and a little bit more airflow. So I wanted to go ahead and make that clear.
Okay.
I can go through the articles briefly if you would like me to. That's been provided to you. Again, these are just the articles themselves. They don't necessarily have the motions. And so, for example, you won't see the numbers with the fiscal year 2022 budget.
Okay.
But this at least gives people an opportunity to know what's going to be on there. So Article 1 is going to be a transfer from our general stabilization fund to go ahead and support the FY22 general fund budget. This will be the second year that we have withdrawn from the stabilization fund. I'm going to say this multiple times, probably over the next few months, if not years. We really need to be prudent in how we spend our money. It's a stabilization fund. It's a rainy day fund. We work so hard to get out of a place where we went through this cycle of taking money out each year. And I really think we should be cautious and make sure that we don't go back to that. Article 2 is the fiscal year 2022 budget. That's probably the big one, obviously. Article 3 is going to be our regular annual transfer to the OPEB trust. And we usually do 2 contributions, one from within our budget, and then also one from free cash. Article 4 is our general consent article. Again, these have not on, one being the Oak Street, second being the high school athletic fields, the third being Warren Woods, and then the final one being the Valentine property. Article 6 is a relatively new one sponsored by the Community Preservation Committee, and that's to appropriate funds for the Valentine barn roof and structural repairs and invasive plant removal. We're going to cover this in a little bit more detail under the Valentine Committee update. For the Trolley Brook Trail. Again, they've been generous enough to approve that. And then we have a series of zoning articles. The first one is a simple clarification of design review process requirements and what triggers design review, I believe. Article 9 is adding a new section to our zoning bylaws, which details a covered open air front porch change or addition. Again, it's a new section. And actually, I should point out that you can see all of the language changes within the zoning warrant articles. And then Article 10, which is really a substantial one, is to revise and replace our downtown district zoning, which I believe is an overlay zoning. We have several different types, ADDA, ADDB, ADDC. So this, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it or follow along with the planning board, but this is a real substantial change. And I think it's a very much an improvement over what was currently there in terms of specificity. And it really puts into, I think, language a lot of the things that we tend to think of visually when we see some of these projects. So many thanks to the planning board and our planning staff, Peter and Emma, for putting this forward. And that's it.
Okay. The planning board has had all their hearings necessary to put these on the ballot and to put these on the town meeting warrant.
I believe they have. I'm not sure if they've closed them.
Okay.
They're still accepting comment, but
Okay.
And so at this point, I would ask the board to close and post the annual town meeting warrant.
Okay. If I can get a motion to close and post the annual town meeting to be happening at June 12th at 10 a.m. with the warrant as presented.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell, Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. And that passes 5-0. So the town meeting warrant will get posted. It'll get updated with specific information from FinCom, specific their language. But the meeting will be Saturday, June 12th at 10 a.m. right now in the high school gymnasium. Great. Okay.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question, Michael,
Rob.
about the zoning? That's quite a substantial zoning article changes. Is the planning board planning on having some public forums to kind of explain all this and go into it in any more detail other than the required hearings or?
Actually, our planner is here, Peter. I'm going to put him on the spot to maybe elaborate on what they're doing in terms of public outreach.
Hi, how you doing, everybody? And thanks for having me tonight. In response to your question, Rob, I would say, the planning board we have nothing planned between here and town meeting regarding a public forum or public outreach. I will say that, we have been undergoing this zoning review for the last, I would say, 18 months. And we did do a fairly comprehensive survey, which collected responses from over 300 Ashland residents, within that process. But with the time, with the calendar, the way it's lining up right now, I would say no at this point. However, I'm happy to work with Michael and Jen to put together any information that leadership sees fit to post online. To do so, I would say.
Yeah, the only concern I have is depends how much time, if people have questions, they'll be asking them at town meeting, we'll be spending more time, but maybe that's, what's needed. So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. I would also say that if people can, if they're reviewing it and they have questions, that they can send those questions to you, correct,
Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
People have questions on the zoning change?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I suggest just a good summary, in plain
Yeah.
English about what you're trying to do and how this addresses issues that have come up?
Yes, I agree. Zoning language and lingo can get fairly wonky fairly quickly. So I will put something together as a memorandum.
That'd be great.
And maybe we can slip it in the warrant as a kind of a summary. Rob, if that would be the best thing.
Great.
But yes, speaking to
All right,
Yolanda,
thank you.
I'm in the office every day, willing to answer questions.
Right. I would say once you have that summary available, maybe get it even up on the website so people can review it before they get to town meeting.
We can
and-
do that as well, 100%.
and to understand, that'd be great. Thank you.
Madam Chair, and just to add one more suggestion. I know that in the past we have had presentations done at the beginning of town meeting. Is this something that if Peter comes up with a summary, we could use that as a presentation for those who may not have had the opportunity to, go on the website to read it prior to. If it takes 5 to 10 minutes during the time frame of the town meeting, because I know we've done that in the past. Is that something that we could possibly do as well?
I think if it meets the moderator's guidelines, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Good. Thank you, everyone, for your patience as we discuss that. Doug, welcome to the select board meeting. You are here to be appointed to the Upper Charles Trail.
Okay.
Typically what we ask new volunteers or volunteers that are not known to everybody, tell us a little bit about yourself, Doug, and why you want to be appointed to the Upper Charles Trail Committee.
Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I've been a resident at the Pine Lake condos for about 9 years. I've always been a nature boy, like to be outside, and I haven't really had much opportunity or experience in volunteering. And this year, or last year, I guess, early last year, I discovered the circumstances with respect to the Upper Charles Trail program plans to have this built, and attended a meeting for the condo owners here in Pine Lake. And it interested me because I'm a biker and I like to get out, and I thought it would be cool to be able to bike out of my garage and down the street onto the trail. And realized after that there were a couple of spots available on the committee. There was actually a committee in the town that appointed. And I thought, this is something I can get involved with because I like to be outside. I like talking about and, working on real estate things and planning and trying to figure out how to do things and make them better. And so that's it.
Great. Any questions for Doug?
I just,
Steve?
wanted to comment. I had the opportunity to go out on a hike along Doug and Tony Lewis recently. And it was clear from the conversation and the time we spent walking through the Pine Lake area that Doug is passionate about this project. So I think he'd be a great addition to the committee.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just to add that I've been to several meetings with Doug and sidewalks. He seems very interested and involved, and I would recommend he be accepted for membership on the committee.
Great.
Thank you.
Then if I can get a motion to appoint Doug Costello to the Upper Charles Trails Committee.
So moved.
And a second? Second. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Steve. Kinsman?
Aye.
Mignani?
Aye.
Mitchell?
Aye.
Shearer?
Aye.
And Greaves, aye. That passes 5-0. Doug, thank you for stepping up, and thank you already for volunteering and for any future work that you may do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Thanks, Doug.
Best.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Doug. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Me too.
Take care. Okay, next item on our agenda was supposed to be Betsy Emberly regarding the little libraries. I am not seeing her on. Michael or Susan, have we heard if she's going to be joining us?
I have not. I am going
not.
to reach out right now.
Okay, well, I mean, I think we
Maybe
all.
we could just,
we,
I would just suggest we could approve her proposal.
well, that's
without
what I
her
was.
pres-
That's what I was just about to say, Rob. I think looking,
Thank you.
we know what the little libraries look like. She added some information as to regards to where they're going to be. So, if we do not hear from her, if I can, so she's looking to do one at the community gardens, one near the Mill Pond Bridge, one over on Washacom Ave / Lakeside Drive by the Washacom Pond Boat Launch.
The question I would have is, have been approved by the locations or the parties involved at the locations? So community gardens, Mill Pond Bridge, those are town properties. I'm assuming the town staff is okay with the installations. And then the Washacom Pond Boat Launch, I'm not quite sure who owns that, who manages that. But I'm assuming Betsy has done her homework.
Usually she does. Susan has. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I
Bless you.
apologize. I didn't get to the mute button in time.
I think what you could do is approve it contingent upon proper approvals.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yes. If I can get the motion to approve 3 new locations for little libraries next to the community gardens, next to the Mill Pond Bridge, and at Washacom Ave by the West Shacom Pond Boat Launch with approval from the proper areas.
So moved.
So moved. And if I can get a second.
Second.
Thank you. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
and Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves, aye. That'll pass 5-0. Hopefully, maybe I'll touch base with her after the meeting and see that she's gotten the proper approvals to get those put in place. Okay. Moving on to a discussion of Ashland's housing production plan in a joint session with the planning board. The planning board, I believe, has not had a reorg, so their vice chair, if you could call Joseph, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to you and the rest of the planning board. Your new members are getting initiation by jumping in.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
If you want to go ahead and call the planning board to order, and
Sure.
then I'm going to pass this over to, I believe, Brandy to kick us off for this.
Thanks, Yolanda.
Yep.
So I hereby call to order the Ashland Planning Board meeting of Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. Please note that this is a joint meeting, the Ashland Board of Select and the Ashland Planning Board, to hear and consider the presentation of the updated 2021 Town of Ashland Housing Production Plan.
Great. Thank you. Brandy?
Thanks, Yolanda. Good to see everybody. So in 2015, our town had initially partnered with MAPC on our first housing production plan. And MAPC conducted a housing needs analysis, got input from the public, and created our first set of housing goals. And so our goal for the 2021 housing production plan is really to update what was done in 2015 and with the changes that have happened over the last 5 years in Ashland, and really to create more inclusive affordability and more diversity in our housing stock. So, the goal is really to have more equitable opportunities for everyone. The initial housing production plan was certified by the state for 5 years. Last year, knowing that the housing production plan was going to expire in 2021, we were able to secure several sources of funding to be able to update this housing production plan for 2021. Those include a community compact housing grant through the state, a grant through MAPC, and $15,000 through the Affordable Housing Trust. In the fall of last year, the town, headed up by our planning department, Peter Matchek and Anna Snellings, started to work with MAPC on putting together this housing production plan. The steering committee, the housing production plan steering committee, was brought together in the fall. And over the last 7 months, we've been working with MAPC to on this plan and soliciting public input to be able to bring this to you for your presentation and hopefully for adoption tonight. I did want to mention that there's a second part of this as well, to draft an inclusionary housing bylaw, and that would require future developers in town to have an affordable housing component, which I think is really important. I think that's going to be one of the single biggest impactful things that can come out of this housing production plan. The goal is to have that, to start work on that as soon as the housing production plan that we're going to talk about tonight is finalized, and that we would bring that inclusionary housing bylaw to the town meeting this fall. And I just also want to say that I know that in the select board's packet, we had the executive summary of the housing production plan, and I know both boards also received the full housing production plan. I don't know if you've all had time to go thoroughly digest it, but I also wanted to let the public know that both the executive summary and the full plan are posted on the town's website. If you go to the planning department and the housing section of the planning department, you will see all the information posted on this whole project, and including both the executive summary and the plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Peter Matchek and Alex Koppelman from MAPC to take us through the presentation tonight. And then we'll have time for questions and things at the end. So Peter, Alex, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Brandy. So just to introduce myself, I am Peter Matchek, the town planner. And for the last, I would say 6 to 8 months, I've been working with Alex Koppelman and the housing production plan, which really was made up of a group of folks, which included Brandy and Trish Kendall that are here tonight from the planning board, along with many others that I see. And I just want to call out David Rosenblum and Steve Greenberg, who I see. So at this point, I'm just going to hand it over to Alex, and he's going to run us through a quick PowerPoint, which is going to go through the review and the findings that came out of the study.
Thanks, Brandy and Peter, and good evening, board members. My name is Alex Koppelman, a regional housing and land use planner with MAPC, and I was the project manager for the housing production plan update. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a presentation, but I just need my screen share enabled. So there's an account on the
Susan, if you could add him and allow him to share his screen. Yeah. It's the one that says screen share.
I did it.
Okay, great. So Alex, you should be all set.
Still says host disabled participant screen sharing. I think you may need to make the screen share account a co-host.
Listing you as a co-host now, Alex, so hopefully you can do that.
We made screen share a co-host as well.
Okay, that's the one.
Yeah, we need to make the one that says screen share. We need to make that a co-host as well.
Yeah, I think this one's a co-host, but not the screen share. Soon enough, we won't have to do this anymore, huh? Things getting a little better.
Oh, right.
Any luck?
Wasn't sure how to dress tonight. I'm used to really coming out for something like this. So it's not coming up. I can share from my other screen. So if you give me a moment to transfer the PowerPoint to this laptop, I can pull it up.
Susan, did you see the screen share? It's on the bottom. It's the name of the person who came in as screen share. I think that's the one we have to make a co-host.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's just not working. I'll transfer the presentation to my laptop. One moment.
Yep.
Oh, hold on. It's working now.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone see the presentation now?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. All right. Oh, just a little bit of technical difficulties, but again, it's great to be with you tonight. My name is Alex. Oops. Switch this. Okay. So again, hopefully all of our technical difficulties have gotten out of the way so far. But It is great to be with you tonight. Again, my name is Alex Koppelman, a regional housing and land use planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, and I had the honor of being the project manager for the town's housing production plan update. So tonight, I'm going to present you with some information about this planning process and the updated plan recommendations for you to consider. So the housing production plan was an update to the town's housing production plan that MAPC assisted with in 2015. MAPC, I'm sure folks are familiar with us. We're a regional planning agency that serves the 101 cities and towns in Greater Boston, and we prioritize equity and smart growth in our planning and our offering of technical assistance to communities. And so, yes, we did do the housing production plan for the town in 2015, and so we contracted with the town to update this plan today. So just to go over, again, some of the reasons why a town would pursue a housing production plan, or what are the benefits of updating your housing production plan. So housing production plan is really a best practice, and Ashland is one of the 25 communities in the Commonwealth that has adopted 6 housing best practices, including adopting that 2015 housing production plan, establishing affordable housing trust, and passing the Community Preservation Act, among others. And so making sure the town's HPP is current will help Ashland remain eligible for housing related funding opportunities and maintain its housing choice designation. A lot can change in 5 years, and so an updated HPP positions the town to identify its most pressing housing needs and challenges and build public understanding of these challenges and develop goals and strategies to meet them. An HPP is also intended to guide and influence new housing development so it meets the town's standards and advances the town's goals, smart growth, and brings benefits to the community. So rather than needing to react to an unplanned development, an HPP is a proactive tool for the town to really think about what are the town's housing goals and how do we accomplish them. And then housing production plans are related to the state law chapter 40B. And so one of the benefits of having a current housing production plan is you can get closer to that 10% SHI goal, subsidized housing inventory. And if the town makes progress towards the SHI with a current housing production plan, it could consider applying for certification from the state for periods of safe harbor. But first and foremost, a housing production plan is about meeting housing need. It includes a comprehensive housing needs assessment using the most current data available, and also includes an assessment of constraints on new housing development as it considers housing development opportunities. For this information, a series of public input, the HPP establishes housing goals as well as strategies to implement these goals according to state requirements, and must also identify sites where the town would like to encourage affordable and mixed income housing development. This is a public-driven process that included numerous public events and meetings, and it was stewarded by the HPP Steering Committee, many who are with us tonight. The Steering Committee has representatives from the Planning Board and Select Board, as well as the Community Preservation Committee and the Board of Health. It was great to work with Tricia Kendall and Brandy Kinsman, who each played a strong role in shaping the plan recommendations and representing the interests of the boards. We also had 2 representatives from the Affordable Housing Trust, including David Rosenblum and the Affordable Housing Chair, Steve Greenberg, who has long been a fierce advocate for affordable housing and played a leading role in the development of the 2015 HPP, as well as the HPP update. The first phase of this planning process is the HPP update, and then as Randy alluded to, we'll eventually move into a second phase to draft an inclusionary housing bylaw, which will be informed by this HPP update process and all the data and input that's been gathered. This has been a roughly 8-month process beginning in October of 2020 when we had our first advisory committee meeting. In the fall of last year, the project team conducted technical analysis and reviewed key findings with the committee to inform the update of the housing production plan goals. The proposed goals were then presented at a public forum in December of last year and finalized based on public input gathered at this event. Then the project team drafted strategies and completed a parcel analysis to identify development opportunities in town based on the broader spatial analysis that was conducted in the 2015 HPP. This information was presented at Public Forum 2, and then the HPP recommendations were finalized by the committee, and now we're going to review them tonight. So as you can see, this process was really public driven, and public input was key to developing this plan, and also included 2 focus group meetings in addition to those 2 public forums, one centered on local housing needs and really understanding how these challenges affect people in Ashland, because this is an issue that affects people, and it is easy to get lost in data. And so we wanted to ground truth that data with focus groups. We also held one centered on housing development with the Ashland town boards that review development, as well as members of the development community. This chart summarizes all the public engagement events that were held throughout the planning process to inform the HPP recommendations. In total, there were over 100 participants at all of the events that were held, but the forums were also broadcasted on Ashland local television, and we are told that the second forum was viewed over 400 times. In addition to public input, an updated housing needs assessment was critical to developing the HPP recommendations. This includes the latest data that was available when the HNA was undertaken, and these describe the town's demographics and how that matches up with the town's housing stock and its affordability. The HNA is a comprehensive document, but I'm just going to go over 3 high-level takeaways for you tonight. Takeaway 1 is the town needs a greater variety of housing types and tenures to facilitate homeownership, enable downsizing, and create opportunities to rent that are more attainable in the marketplace. And so here we have an excerpt from the Housing Need Focus Group. One of the participants described the difficulty of buying a home in town, especially as a single person. And this is really because the town's housing stock is primarily single-family homes at 78%, although 20% of these are attached homes, meaning they're either townhouses or condominiums, offering a decent share of smaller homes to purchase. However, the town needs a greater variety of housing options like accessory dwelling units, duplexes, triplexes, small multifamily buildings to meet a broad array of housing needs. A greater variety of housing will help first-time homebuyers get a start in Ashland, as well as provide seniors with downsizing options so they can stay in town if they choose to, and offer more opportunities to rent for those who don't have the savings required to purchase a home in town. The second takeaway is households of various sizes and income levels. In order for them to live in Ashland, there's a need for more lower cost housing that is more naturally affordable. So there's kind of 2 types of affordable housing that we often think about. There is the deed restricted affordable housing, which is required to be affordable and required to cost no more than 30% of your income, and you must be income eligible to live in that kind of housing. But then there's also housing that is more affordable in the marketplace and already just happens to cost around 30% of your income. And so having a greater variety of housing options will help the town meet housing needs, but also present more opportunity to see more naturally occurring affordable housing. And so here's an excerpt from a realtor who attended the Housing Need Focus Group and discussed the difficulty he had trying to find his son a home to purchase in town. And this is really because median sale prices in Ashland are high, just as they are in the Metro West area and all of Greater Boston. But there has been increases in the median price of single-family homes in Ashland. The median price of a single-family home today is $487,500. That's up 27% from when the 2015 HPP was adopted. And while condominiums might offer a more affordable option, their median price has increased at an even faster rate of 45%, likely skewed by some of the recent developments that have been a little higher end. And the median price of a condominium in town is now $400,000. So if you think about that, someone who's going to put just 10% down on either of these homes, they'd have to have $48,750 saved up for a single family home and $40,000 for a condominium. And when a household puts less than 20% down, they have to pay for private mortgage insurance, which adds to monthly costs that could really make or break the ability to afford a mortgage. And so if someone is not able to purchase a home in town, then they're going to look to rent. But there aren't many rental options in town, and the median rent in Ashland is quite high. Local MLS data shows median rent today, or in 2018, at $2,800. So there has been some very exciting new developments, such as the Cirrus Apartments, that's added to the town stock of new rental units, the tune of about 400 rental housing units. But rental housing units still make up less than a quarter of the town's housing stock, and we really need to think about this because it determines who can live in Ashland if they're not able to purchase a home. And so then takeaway 3 is recognizing that housing is just not always going to be affordable in the marketplace, and it's not always going to serve all households. So the town needs to expand the supply of deed restricted affordable housing that's required to cost no more than 30% of a household's income. And here we have another excerpt from the Housing Need Focus Group. This was a senior who sold their house in Ashland and then realized that they weren't going to be able to buy a smaller house. And they eventually moved with their adult children to another community, and they live in an accessory dwelling unit while their children live in the principal home. And things seem to have worked out for them, but they were really sad that they had to leave Ashland because they couldn't find the housing that they needed. So deed restricted affordable housing, you have to be income eligible, and this is based on the area median income. The area median income is $119,000. If you're making 80% of that or lower, typically you are eligible for affordable housing. Oftentimes people can be surprised how high of an income you can have and be eligible. An individual household could be making $67,400 and still be eligible. Varies by household size, so it's about $96,000 for a 4-person household. So in Ashland, roughly 1,800 households out of the roughly 6,500 households in town are eligible to live in deed restricted affordable housing. That's about 29% of households in town. And as you can see in the chart here, which shows the various income levels of those who are eligible, there's need across the board in the extremely low income category, the very low income category, and those making 80% of the area median income. So the town's really going to need to focus on creating deed restricted affordable housing that's available to a range of different incomes. So who are these households that are eligible for deed restricted affordable housing? This chart here shows those who are eligible by household type. And really you can see that there are those who are eligible in all household types across town, but particularly seniors are experiencing housing need, as 58% of senior households are eligible to live in deed restricted affordable housing. And then also singles, or those who live with roommates, of the roughly 1,000 of those households, 28% are eligible for deed restricted affordable housing. But as you can see, there are those who are eligible both in small family households and large family households. And so since the last housing production plan was adopted, the town has made significant progress on its subsidized housing inventory, doubling that in 5 years, and the town should be commended for those efforts. Today, there are 415 units on the town's SHI, giving the town 6.3% SHI. And while this is good, it's not up to the 10% goal set by the state. And really, what we want to think about is those income eligible households and the need for affordable housing. So of the 1,885 income eligible households, there's 415 units on the town's SHI. But some of those units, if they're created through 40B, could be market rate rentals. So there could be even fewer deed restricted housing units. But essentially, there are, for every 5 income eligible households in town, there's 1 unit on the town's SHI. And so all of this information and public input was discussed with the steering committee and led to the update of the housing production plan recommendations. And so now I'm going to give a brief summary of those recommendations, and I encourage you to follow along in the executive summary or the full plan report. So here is a list of the 2015 housing production plan goals. There were 7 of them, and we discussed these with the committee after reviewing all this information. And then we presented these goals at the first public forum held in December of last year. And we had discussions, we had different engagement activities in the group chat, and then we also did live polling and asked the audience whether they thought these goals were still relevant today. Generally speaking, there was broad support for these goals, which is expected since they were established after an extensive planning process in 2015. But some of the conversation and feedback that we got in the forum showed that the goals could be a little more clear. We saw that some folks had a little difficulty understanding the goals and that there was some duplicity here with some of the goals. Additionally, the way that these were set up, there were strategies underneath each goal. And in some ways that worked, but in other ways it didn't allow for showing the relationship between the strategies and the different goals and between different strategies. So the steering committee decided to consolidate those 7 goals into 4 and add a goal around affirmatively furthering fair housing based on data and public input that shows that Ashland would like to continue to work towards being a diverse and inclusive community as it is, and to continue to do that. So these are the 2021 updated goals. The first, to provide and preserve housing for all incomes and ages. The second, to adopt inclusionary zoning, which is talking about the inclusionary housing bylaw that we're going to be working on, but also looking at the town zoning regulations to see if they can facilitate more naturally occurring affordable housing and more options for folks. And then affirmatively furthering fair housing to protect equal housing opportunities for people of color and all classes protected under the federal and state fair housing laws. And then 4, to promote sustainability by harmonizing housing needs with walkability and access to open space, recreation, public transit, commercial amenities, and clean energy opportunities. And then goal 5, to build community awareness so that the community understands these housing challenges and supports the town in its efforts to address them. And so as you can see, the goals were organized with a set of 9 priority strategies. This is the first set on the chart here. But one of the things that we did was we reorganized the goals so that they would be in this matrix and could correspond to different strategies, because many of the strategies work towards several goals, as you can see in this chart here. There were over 20 recommendations in the 2015 Housing Production Plan, and because there were so many of them and because of many other challenges, few of those recommendations were implemented. So from the very beginning, we wanted to create a strategic, targeted housing production plan update and focus on priority strategies that the town could actually work to implement in the next 5 years. And so here are the first set of priority strategies. The first, inclusive housing, to develop an inclusive housing bylaw, which we're going to be doing as a part of the second phase of this planning process. The second is to continue to use the local initiative program and the comprehensive permitting process to facilitate affordable housing development before and after the town reaches that 10% SHI goal or attains safe harbor in some other way. And the reason for this is because the town has had a lot of success utilizing this program to get affordable housing in town. It's one of the primary ways that that has happened. And so we believe that this is a great tool for the town to use. And this is something the town can do by choice, even if the town is at safe harbor. And then the third priority strategy is to undertake a technical analysis to explore whether a smart growth overlay may be beneficial to the town, either a mixed use overlay district, which would create mixed income and affordable housing, and if adopted would also offer the town state funding that could be used for capital infrastructure needs. And then there's also a newer 4UR overlay that's designed to facilitate the development of small starter homes. And then the fourth is to look at the form-based code that's being used in the downtown is actually being improved further through a study with MAPC right now. There's already one of the few towns in the region that has a form-based code, and that has offered the town flexibility to really think about the design and feel of buildings rather than the use of buildings, and offers more flexibility to really get the kind of housing that you want. And so the recommendation here is to consider other areas where form-based code may be advantageous. And then the fifth is to create an updated accessory dwelling unit bylaw. The town currently has an ADU bylaw, but it really restricts this to internal ADUs and those who occupy the principal single-family home. Taking a look at this to investigate interest and how the ADU bylaws are impacting the ability to develop ADUs is a priority strategy. We learned a lot about this at the Housing Development Focus Group, and there have been very few ADUs permitted, but there seems to be significant interest. And based on the data, I can say there's a great need for this additional housing option. The sixth is emergency assistance. This is a continuation from the 2015 HPP, but just talks a little bit more about, oh, sorry, this is not. This is something the Affordable Housing Trust has been doing because of the pandemic. And the recommendation here is to consider making this more of a permanent program and offering assistance more broadly, and making funding and emergency assistance for renters and homeowners who are struggling to pay the rent and struggling to pay the mortgage, making that funding more easy for the town and Affordable Housing Trust to access so that they can distribute that through programming as needs arise. The seventh is a continuation from the 2015 Housing Production Plan. It talks about using town-owned land for affordable housing production. And this is a great way for the town to really leverage town-owned land to make it easier to finance the development of affordable housing, and also gives the town the ability to issue an RFP and really get exactly what it's looking for in terms of housing development. Looks like I do have a typo there. The town-owned land appears twice. Apologize for that. The ninth one is resident awareness. So utilize this plan, and we're going to be creating a story map after these recommendations are finalized. That's going to be a digital hub for people to go to and look at the recommendations and explore interactive maps, and will be used to build awareness of the town's housing needs. And then the last priority strategy is to look at housing development opportunities, using the parcel analysis that was done that I'm going to go over in a moment here to really think about how do we adjust our regulations to encourage the kind of housing that we want to see, assess whether there are properties the town might want to acquire, and other ways that the town could incentivize the kind of housing development it would like to see in the areas it would like to see that housing. And so leading into the housing development opportunities, the 2015 HPP did a high-level spatial analysis to identify areas that were favorable and suitable for housing development, based on principles of smart growth and transportation-oriented development. And essentially, it identified areas in and near the downtown and train station, as well as the Pond Street corridor. And so the HPP update used this as a starting guide to look at those areas and did a more in-depth parcel analysis of those areas. So in the downtown, this started with about 1,165 properties. And then in the Pond Street area, 32 properties. And if you look at the zoning map here, we're essentially talking about all the colorful zoning districts, not any of the single family ones. Those were excluded from consideration. And obviously protected open space, wetlands, and environmentally sensitive areas were excluded from consideration as well. So same kind of situation over here at the intersection of Elliott and Pond Street. And so the parcel analysis started with all of these different parcels and then looked at building to land ratio to narrow things down to evaluate parcels that were more likely to see either redevelopment or infill development. And from that, it was able to narrow down the analysis further. And then this was discussed with the committee, and eventually the sites were evaluated based on walkability, proximity to transit, economic impacts, increasing local spending power near the downtown, all of those different characteristics. And then after several conversations, a final list was narrowed to 50 parcels and categorized into 4 development opportunity types based on location, area, and acreage, as shown in this chart here. And so here is a map of all of those different properties in their different areas. So as you can see, we have the type 1, which is smaller parcels in yellow in the downtown. The type 2, also smaller parcels, plus or minus an acre near the train station. Smaller parcels in blue near Pond Street, and then medium to large parcels near the downtown in green. I want to note that several of these are privately owned, and anything that happens on them will be up to the private developer, but this is intended to be a tool for the town to use to see where it would like to see some housing development and what type of housing it would like to see there, and partner with the development community to bring those things to fruition. So the 4 different development opportunity types were established, and then we presented these types at public forum 2 and recommended appropriate housing typologies that make sense in these areas. And then we asked participants through a poll which housing types they supported in each of these 4 areas. So for development opportunity type 1, the top housing type that was ranked was mixed use. And then there was also pretty high numbers for small multifamily and townhouse development. And I should note that participants were able to check all housing types that they supported. And broadly speaking, there was really no opposition to any housing types, but there are some that really stand out, like here, mixed use and small multifamily near the downtown. And then near the train station, the recommended housing types here, townhouse, small multifamily, parking. A lot of enthusiasm here for multifamily, small multifamily, and townhouse development, which is encouraging, as well as a pretty good amount of support for mixed use. And then here in the development type 3 at Pond Street, we see that there was overwhelming support for mixed use here, which is expected since there's a mixed use overlay district there right now, but also support for small multifamily, and townhouses, and also some typed in the chat that they would like to see triple deckers in this area. And then type 4, which is the larger, medium and larger parcels just outside of downtown. Here, the most favorable housing type and really across the board was cluster cottage housing. So 41% would like to see that there. And then also some support for townhouses and multifamily housing. And then finally, there is a list of housing best practices. Many were carried over from the recommendations of the 2015 HPP. But again, we wanted to have those priority strategies to focus on in the next 5 years. These aren't recommendations, they're actually just best practices that the town can look at and choose from as opportunities arise in the future. They're categorized into regulatory programming and funding best practices. I won't go over them all here, but an example of a regulatory one would be to consider strengthening the town's building code to create more energy efficient homes and result in lower cost homes. And so then programming best practices, so establishing different programs, like so example of that would be possibly to promote existing state programs that help first-time home buyers and help seniors age in place. And then funding best practices. And so I should note that if this HPP is adopted, the town will continue to be eligible for funding opportunities related to housing and maintain its housing choice designation. So I know that was a lot. I'm sure you have several questions for me. And so now I'd like to just open up the floor for questions and comments.
Okay, members of either the planning board or select board, questions, comments on what we've seen that you'd like to share with the rest of us?
This is Lakshmi. I'm from the planning board. The survey that was taken, was it based on input during the public forum or was there a public survey? I'm sorry if you'd already mentioned it, but I just wanted to ask that question.
Yeah, about the housing type rankings?
Yes, the housing type rankings in the very.
Yeah, that was done at the second public forum via live polling. And I believe there was quite a few participants at that one. I can look back at the chart to see how many.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
Well, thank you to the committee for a very impressive report, and thank you, Alex, for the presentation. We have a question regarding the Ashland Housing Authority, and then we also have two subsidized developments in town, Ashland House and Ashland Commons. Why aren't they part of this discussion? And specifically the Housing Authority, because I know that in other communities, the Housing Authority has partnered with CPC in the community to create additional affordable housing. So why aren't they part of this discussion?
Yeah, so we actually met with Candace Avery, the director of the Ashland Housing Authority, and there is a section summarizing that conversation in the, I think it's the housing toolkit section. But anyway, town staff and I had a great conversation to really learn more about how we could get the Ashland Housing Authority more involved in meeting the town's housing goals. I agree with you. It's an asset that could really be tapped into and maybe has been a little underutilized. The authority only has one property. It has 40 units. It's in the process of upgrading and weatherizing those so they're more energy efficient. And my big takeaway from talking to Candace is that, you know, the authority has a lot of expertise to really bring about good affordable housing that reaches deep levels of affordability, and they're interested in acquiring property. And so the town could really consider, as a part of that recommendation, to look at town-owned land, whether it would make sense to possibly look at deeding some of those opportunities to the housing authority, but that would be up to the town.
Good. And what, just a follow-up on this is, I noticed that a number of particularly CPA projects utilize or partner with Habitat for projects. And, you know, I know several years ago we had a discussion that didn't necessarily evolve at that point, but you know, it would seem that that would be another viable partner.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I believe that is also discussed in the housing toolkit section. There's an update on how CPA is being used. And I agree that that's another thing that could be better utilized in the future.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may piggyback on Mr. Mitchell's comment about the Habitat for Humanity. I've been in contact with Henry Roche from Habitat for Humanity. We spoke with Hank a few years ago from the Affordable Housing Trust about getting involved in a project. For whatever reason, that conversation just went awry, but it's been brought back up, and we're hopefully Henry will be attending our meeting via Zoom tomorrow afternoon to continue that discussion, hopefully work on something with the town.
Very good. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Good. Other questions or comments from either select board or planning board members? Rob?
Madam Chair, yeah,
Yeah.
just I wholeheartely endorse this report and the measures. I intend to. I believe we're going to vote on it tonight. Am I correct in that understanding?
Yes, that's part of part of what we're doing.
So
tonight.
I intend to support it, and I want to thank everyone involved for their efforts. I think these are important set of toolkits, and I think we all recognize the real issues with affordable housing and housing in general in town. My only caveat with my vote is that, and I also endorse the general concepts of the parcel analysis. I think that was very well done in terms of identifying potential space, potential parcels. I just want to make sure that, just to point out that my vote to approve this does not mean I approve that every parcel in that analysis should be used for affordable housing. There may be other purposes, such as open space or parkland or other public or private uses that may be preferred in any particular parcel. But I do agree that this is a good approach to identifying potential areas. And so I just kind of put that, just that awareness in my vote of support. But otherwise, I think this is a great report, and happy to see it moving forward. And it's continuing the work we started years ago with the first plan. And I'm sure it'll have widespread support in terms of trying to do something about the need for affordable housing and the really difficult level of costs that housing is currently going through, really making it difficult for people to get housing. So I certainly endorse this plan. So thank you for your efforts.
Okay.
Thanks, Rob. Can I just respond really quick to the opportunity analysis?
Sure.
Those final sites that are in there, they're actually not really sites, they're opportunity types. So they're sites that are categorized. And so there's really no language in the plan
Sure.
that says they have to be developed for affordable housing.
Well, and I was
Thank you
also,
for that. Yep.
Yep. I was also going to respond, Rob. Basically, it's a two-step process, right? As you said, we need to approve this plan. This is a plan. It is not, okay,
That's
go
right.
out and do this right away, but we have to approve it here. It then has to get approved by the state so that once it's in place, it helps protect us. And then from there, we have to take these tips and take these guidelines and take these recommendations about how we can increase our affordable housing by using this. Do we have to use every tip or every recommendation? No, we have to determine
That's right.
as a community what we want to take on and then create affordable housing.
Yes, I understand. I just wanted to make sure that everyone else understands that as well.
Yep.
So thank you for that.
Yep. Trisha?
Yeah, as the planning board representative, on the HPP committee, I just wanted to say that we're really focusing on looking at what had been done in 2015 and trying to bring those things that had most to do with today and where we are today with issues of diversity to COVID to increasing housing costs, like all the things that really are very current issues, and to try to put it all in a form that somehow simplifies, streamlines, and looks at maybe those strategies that by no means the only strategies or the only partnerships or the only locations, but ones that might, where we can put our focus to get the best result more quickly, say. And so it was quite a lot of data and a lot of work that went into it, a lot of discussion. And while on one hand, it's not rocket science of these things that we should do. And on the other hand, it's a lot of information to kind of streamline so that it's accessible to all and that we can start using it as a plan to get to where we want to go. So I'm happy we got this far. Obviously there's a few typos and stuff in it, but the correctness of the work and the direction, I hope everyone sees the strength in that.
Great. Thank you, Trisha. Any other comments or questions? Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to congratulate and thank everybody that was on the housing production plan. A lot of work and time and effort went into it. I was happy to be a participant in all the and all the public forums. I think it was necessary that everybody heard the voices that were out there, and I'm just an advocate for those folks who've lived in town for many years, want to downsize and they can't. That's a focus. I think that's something that needs to be paramount in this housing production plan as well, and we need to focus on that. One of the things that I would like to see, and I have brought this up over the last 6 years, is to increase Park Road development. I would like to see another location where that can be put on and another piece of property. Make those units a little bit bigger so they're not, little dog kennels, but a place where people can live and live comfortably. So I appreciate all the effort and input that was provided, but we need to stay focused on the things that are paramount, and that is to make sure that the seniors that want to stay in town have the ability to do so. So affordable housing for seniors to me is paramount. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Questions or comments?
Yolanda, I don't know if either Steve Greenberg or David Rosenblum, who are here tonight from the steering committee, want to make any comments too, but I if we're able to, I'd like them to be able to have the ability to make some comments.
I was leaving it for the boards and the two boards first, and then I was going to open it up to the committee.
Okay.
And then I was also gonna, I'm not seeing much public other than the boards, and see if there was any public. Hold on, Mark. Steve and or David. Steve, you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
I did. I think the plan is an important tool, but I think what Brandy mentioned early on in this presentation was the development of an inclusionary zoning bylaw is going to be the most effective tool to increase the housing stock for affordability. And I think once we can get this component of the housing production plan voted on and completed and approved by the state, the most important step, I feel, and I think others on the committee hopefully feel the same way, and the town, that the inclusionary zoning bylaw will be the most effective tool to developing more affordable housing here in the town of Ashland.
Yeah, Steve, that's why, the adoption of inclusionary zoning was included in the original housing production plan as a tool, and it just did not get implemented. So, David?
Yeah, I think it's a great plan, and thank you to MAPC and everybody else. And I think having different options, different housing types is very important. Where all that seems to be being built is very big houses, and I think allowing more choices will allow more people to live in town. Thanks.
Well, before I open it up for a motion or a vote, is there any public other than members of the committee or, oh, Mark, you had raised your hand. Mark Tassoni, go ahead, unmute yourself, Mark.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I find this report very interesting and basically straightforward. Well, I have maybe a small question, if it can be brought forward, is has there been any inventory of land that if you put some more housing, is it that contested to work together as inventory for the land itself to what housing can be fit? That's one question. I have another one after.
So Mark, are you asking based on the type of land, what kind of housing can be put there?
Yes.
Right, so that was reviewed, and part of it, we have to look at who owns it and what zoning it's currently under.
Okay.
But that's getting more into detail than what the housing production plan is talking to.
Okay.
Right, I mean, that's an implementation. Right now, we're trying to discuss the plan and get it moved forward. What you're looking at is implementation of the information that has been presented. Okay.
And I've been to the other MAPC planning board ones that they've been at. Mr. Ellen Koppelman has been a great presentator of detail and what he puts out in program and stability things. And I'm thanking him in his plan. And I'm going to just blow the horn again. To keep in the form-based code, and I'm thinking the planning board to do it too, because without form-based code, which is being upgraded, I think any building that gets there needs to have a specific design and purpose. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. Great. So I too want to thank the committee that created this. Having sat on the first one, I know the amount of time and energy and the detail that goes into this. So thank you all who have done that and have brought this forward. This needs to be separately approved by the planning board and then separately approved by the select board. So Joe, I'm going to let you go ahead and do the approval from the planning board, and then we will do the approval for the select board.
You want to, can I just?
Okay.
Yep,
can
go
I
ahead,
just
Alex.
Really quickly, just for the state's purposes, a motion should say adopt rather than approves.
Adopt. Great, thank you.
Tricia, would you like to do the honors, given all of your efforts on this? Make the motion.
Unmute.
Did I unmute myself? Should I get my wording correct? I would like to move that the Ashland Planning Board adopt the 2021 housing production plan as presented.
Do we have a second? Do a roll call vote.
Tricia Kendall, aye.
Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Rupertone, aye. The motion passes 4-0.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tricia. If I can get a motion from the select board reflecting the same wording.
Would you like me to try?
Sure, go ahead, Joe. You can do it.
I know I can do it. I would like the select board to consider adopting the housing production plan as presented this evening.
Okay, that's a motion. If I can get Brandy will second that. Thank you, Brandy. We'll do a roll call vote. Kinsman.
Aye.
Mignani.
Aye.
Greaves. I'm sorry, Mitchell. I saw your hand, Shear.
Chair, aye.
And Greaves, aye. And that passes 5-0. Thank you all for your work. We can now submit this to the state. Hopefully it won't take too long to turn around. And then we can use this as a guideline and improve our affordable housing and just our housing stock, because we all have talked about that it needs to be done.
Yes, Yolanda, can I just close
Joe?
the planning board meeting, please?
You sure can. Go ahead. I'll let you guys all go enjoy your night.
Is there a motion to close the planning board meeting of May 19th?
So moved.
Second.
All right, do a roll call vote.
Tricia Kendall, aye.
Lakshmi Krishnan, aye.
Deepa Venkatai.
Joe Rupertone, aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you all and good night.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Joe.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Lakshmi.
Thank you, guys.
And congratulations,
Bye.
Deepa.
Nice work.
You too.
Oh, yes. Congratulations.
Yolanda, before we move on, I just wanted to also thank Alex and the staff at MAPC, as well as Peter and Emma, that worked so hard on this, especially considering we were, wanting to get this on this particular agenda. So just thank you to everybody that's been involved in this, and the steering committee has been great to work with. So thank you.
And Brandy, thank you for stepping up as the select board representative. I appreciate that.
Yes. You're
A lot of work.
A lot of work. Thank you, kiddo.
I'll just add, it's been great working with the committee and the town of Ashland, and I really look forward to the phase 2 of this planning project.
Great.
Housing. So
great. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Peter.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you to Alex.
Yep. Okay. Great. I believe that's all the thank yous to where we are for the housing production plan. We are moving now to our next appointment with the Valentine Committee. The members of the Valentine Committee are here. They are going to close out their charge for a recommendation, and then we'll see where else we go with that this evening.
Okay.
Michael, I'll let you start us.
All right. Thank you, Yolanda. As you mentioned, the Valentine Committee is before you tonight to make a recommendation or a number of recommendations with regards to the Valentine estate. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of this, I'd like to introduce members of the committee, many of whom are on here tonight. Scott LaBelle is here. Miles McConish is here. Margie Gassel is here. Susie Scher, I believe she's here. Judy Inigus is, I believe, here. And then also Cedric Bacon, who is a member of the committee, but could not make it tonight. But the recommendations that we talk about were all voted unanimously by the committee. Before we get into the recommendation, I do just want to go into the charge of the committee. And if you do not mind, I'm going to share my screen and
Sorry, Cedric is just joining us now.
okay. Everybody see this?
Right now, it's still showing your document directory, not the actual document.
Okay.
You got to double click again.
How about now?
Nope, still not yet. Double click on your document.
Is that successful?
Nope.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, I wasn't
You
going to
can
read
just read it.
Yeah.
So,
I think many of us are familiar, but go ahead and you can just read it, Michael.
If you click on where the file, the icon of the file is rather than the title, that might work.
okay, I'll give it one more time, Scott. One more try. Let's see.
Come on.
How about this?
There we go.
Oh, yes. Awesome. Okay. So the charge of the committee really consisted of 4 parts. So the first one was to attend scheduled meetings. The second was to work to develop interest in the property from targeted proposers. Number 3 was to evaluate proposals. And if you see at the top, really the main chunk of the charge was to assist the town in identifying both proper and feasible reuse of the property, mainly by soliciting and reviewing proposals from interested parties. And then the last charge was to make a recommendation of the best and most feasible proposal to the select board and town meeting for appropriate action. And upon the recommendation being accepted by the select board, the select board could either dissolve the committee or produce another charge for the committee to undertake. So having said that, the committee started meeting in the fall of 2019. The first part of the work that the committee did was actually very substantial gathering of information from other facilities in different communities that had similar situations, meaning that they had a historical property that was in maybe not the best shape, that the town in some way, shape, or form repurposed and came up with some adaptive reuse for. And what the committee did was actually either met with those communities and the leaders of those communities or the leaders of those projects to determine information and find out how they got started and what some of the challenges were and what some of the opportunities were, or they actually came into town hall and presented to the committee that same information. So obviously that was pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, and obviously things took a little bit of a little time to get adjusted. And then afterwards, based on these discussions and then input from the community that we had been hearing for a number of years now, the committee developed an RFP to solicit proposals for the adaptive reuse of the property. And the RFP contained a number of uses that the community would like to see, a number of different aspects that they wanted to keep as part of the property. And again, so that RFP was issued, and we went through a really substantive advertising process. So not only did we do advertising passively and just put it in various publications, actually a national publication picked it up, but we also actively pursued partners for this project. And that included the Sudbury Valley Trustees, Native Community Organic Farm, and a couple of other organizations that we thought would be interested in this property. But ultimately, when the deadline came, we only received one proposal and one letter of interest from an organization. So that one proposal has gone through a vetting process, and I think the developer has presented that presentation, And I will get to what the committee's recommendation is regarding that in a little bit. I also just want to point out that as this was going on, the committee also undertook an investigation into what needed to be done at the property to stabilize it and make sure that we actually had a future for it, or we could have a future use for it. Because obviously, if it's not standing, there's not much we can do with a property like that. And in addition to that, there was also a lot of work done by our project manager to stabilize the property as well. So we did multiple roof repairs or roof coverings with very giant tarps. There was a clearing done on the side of the property. If you remember, on the house itself, there was a sliding glass door that was replaced and actually sealed up, and actually a very good job done with that. And then there were a number of smaller fixes that happened. And concurrently, while we were doing that, we were getting evaluations from professionals as to what needed to be done. And the two things that emerged really were the foundation and then to another extent, the roof. So that was all being done as part of the committee's work as well, while they were doing this whole investigation of different community assets and also developing this RFP. So there's been a lot of work that's been done by the committee. I really can't impress upon the select board how much has been done. They met many times, sometimes twice a month, trying to get this work and move this work forward. And ultimately, we came to a point where we felt like it was time to issue a recommendation to the select board. And so I'll go through those right now. So the first is to close the current RFP process. The proposal that had been presented had a number of questions raised in regards to the proposal, in the proposal itself, and then also how it meshed with the uses and the allowed uses of that property. So the committee recommends to go ahead and just close this RFP process and not award the property to that one proposer. Second thing is, like I had mentioned, one thing that had emerged is that the property use needs to be consistent with a couple of things. So first, it needs to be consistent with Article 97 of the Massachusetts Constitution, which deals with open space and parkland. And then the second is to be consistent with conservation and preservation restrictions that need to be on the property because of our use of CPA funds to help purchase and work on the property. And to that point, the third recommendation is that the committee members would love to stay involved in this process. I know the select board has selected or asked Steve Mitchell and Brandy Kinsman as members of the board to work on the conservation restriction. I think each of these board members would like to be involved in that process and stay involved in that process. Again, they put a lot of work into it. And number 4 is to further secure the property and keep an eye on the property and maintain the property. So that whole, if there are broken windows, things like that, make sure that those are taken care of. And then finally, the final recommendation was to move ahead and repair the roof and repair the foundation of the Valentine barn. And to that end, CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, has been approached to fund those repairs. And the Community Preservation Committee has approved $125,000. That will then be put on the town meeting warrant, which we discussed earlier tonight, and will need to be voted on at town meeting. There is one thing that needs to happen for that to actually move forward. There's another step, and that is the select board needs to approve this request of $125,000, because since we're using the historical bucket of CPA, we need to have a historical committee member as part of CPC, but we currently do not have a historical committee member. So we need the board to go ahead and authorize that warrant article to go forward. And with that, I would open it up to any of the committee members, anything that I might have missed or anything you would want to correct.
Anybody from the Valentine Committee before I open it up to the board for questions who'd like to add or comment or I'm not seeing any. I want to say thank you to the committee members, to Margie and Susan and Miles and Scott and Cedric for your work. We appreciate it. I know it's been difficult. I know there's been a lot of back and forth. Thank you for your recommendation. I'm now going to open it up to the select board for comments regarding the recommendation. Steve, go ahead.
Well, again, I'd like to agree with Yolanda's thanks to the committee for all your work.
Hey, Steve, I can't hear you. Could you speak up?
Let me move it a little closer, Rob. So again, I'd like to thank also the committee for all your work. As Michael mentioned, Brandy and I are a subcommittee that's been charged with creating a draft restriction that we will submit to the select board for review and ultimately approval. I think I'll speak for Brandy at this point, but I'm excited. I think we're both excited that you want to stay involved in this process with us. We're planning, we have not met yet. Our plan was to hear your recommendations first and then to start to meet. I believe our first meeting is going to, and of course, these are public meetings. They'll be posted. And we're planning to meet with our town council first, just to review some of the legalese that's involved with restrictions. And but again, we're excited that you're going to participate with us. I think it's valuable that you do. So thank you very much.
Brandy, Joe, or Rob, anything? Brandy, I'll let you go.
Thanks, Sam. So I would agree and echo Steve's comments. I'm excited to be a part of this and to start working on the restrictions on this property. And then, you know, at that point, then we'll be able to have a better sense of what the next step is for the Valentine estate. So I do thank you for all the work that you've done. I know that, you know, in addition to the committee members, I'm sure that there will be other members of the public that will want to be involved in this process too. And so, you know, we do welcome folks to get involved. I think anyone that has interest and expertise in this is welcome. I did have a question on the $125,000 request from CPC. So that will secure the foundation and the roof. Do we feel pretty confident that that is the extent of what is needed, sort of in the immediate? When I mean immediate, it might be, you know, it might, because, you know, you're thinking about putting restrictions on this property before we kind of do anything else. It may not be for another, say, a couple years before we actually, before there's any renovation to the property itself. So do we feel pretty strongly like that $125,000 will be enough to bridge that gap between now and then?
Well, I can say in terms of the repairs, the actual repairs that are being made, it's mentioned in the report. We had a number of structural people come out and discuss and evaluate and discuss what some of the deficiencies were in the barn. Really, the foundation and the roof were the top two things that came up all the time. The house is actually in pretty decent shape. It still needs a lot of work, but structurally it's sound. In terms of the actual costs, we've been able to go out and get, really, I want to thank Robin Hicks for helping with this, going out and getting estimates from different roofing companies and then also different foundation people who do foundation work. Jen had actually put out the foundation work to bid earlier, and so we had received a proposal for that. That proposal is no longer good just because of time limitations. But the numbers that we got back we felt that $125,000 would sufficiently cover that.
Thank you.
Anything else, Brandy?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Joe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With respect to the CPC funding that we will be looking for to do the repairs, which is $125,000, with the deed restriction that's going to be written for future activities on that particular property, will Article 97 come into play as a result of that? And will that restrict what we can use it for or what we can't use down the road for with respect to activities? Because that's a concern for me anyway.
So Article 97 does apply to the entirety of the property, which consists of 3 parcels. So yes, there are certain limitations related to that. We also have to follow, the conservation restrictions that are being drafted. So the key is going to be drafting conservation restrictions and preservation restrictions that are both consistent with Article 97, but also reflect the will of the community and what the community would like to see, and balance that as best as you can.
Okay, I guess
It
that's
must be
the
observed.
best answer I can get for right now. That's fine. I can deal with it, but I'm just wondering if that's going to tie our hands up if we wanted to utilize that bond to generate revenues for other sources or other means of entertainment or community activities and events to generate revenue to help support that particular property. That would be my concern.
Yeah, I think the devil would be in the details there, Joe.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say, Joe. My understanding is that as long as the restrictions that we put on it, respect the historic and the open space,
Yep.
if we put details in that allow us to use it for events where we can rent them out, as long as that's spelled in the restrictions.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Which is what Steve and Brandy are going to be working on with a lot of input from a lot of people.
And I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the work that you folks have done on it. It's not an easy thing. I know you guys are probably a little disappointed that you put all this time and effort into it, and we only get one RFP out of this. But it's trial and error, and you can't give up. Just not give up on this. That's all. It's a beautiful piece of property, and at some point, we'll bring it back to its glory days for sure.
Yep.
So
Steve,
Joe,
you wanted to say?
Just to follow up, Joe, there are examples out there in the real world where, there's properties that are being utilized in a variety of ways consistent with restrictions and so on. So that's why our first step is going to be looking at the legalese of it.
And that's fine. That's what we should be doing. Shouldn't put the cart before the horse.
Our goal is to at least, from my perspective.
Yolanda, I know
Hold on,
people
Rob.
can't probably.
Hold on,
I don't
Steve
know.
is talking.
Okay, yeah, I can't. Hey, Steve, can you speak up? I can't hear you.
I'm speaking up, Rob. I'll speak up louder, but from my perspective, Joe, I would like to see us craft a document that's as broad as possible under the legal umbrella that we need to operate it. Article 87 and then conservation, historical restrictions. So that's the goal.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Rob, did you have any comments or anything you wanted to add?
Yes. Yeah, my question is, and maybe Steve addressed this, but I can't hear most of what he's saying, unfortunately. But my question is about the current Valentine Committee has indicated interest in continuing the process. And we've also had applications from people who want to get involved. So I guess my question is, what's the role for the Valentine Committee, and when are we going to act on, if there is one, are we going to consider these applications and increase the members of the committee?
Well, I think members of the committee could speak to that. I can say broadly, I think the decision whether to discontinue the committee and have them participate individually or give a charge, a different charge, is going to be, hope you're okay there, Rob, is going to be up to the board. And I think whether or not the committee members feel like a town committee is the best way that their talents and resources can be used in terms of furthering this project, and whether they want to stay on that committee would be up to them. But I think there are a number of ways that committee members and the public can be involved. Again,
All right, so I think if I understand you correctly, the committee is ending its effective as a committee. That's going to be ending. Is that the understanding?
well, again, I would ask that is the board's decision. That's the select board's decision. And I would ask the individual members of the committee for their opinions on that.
Right. And that's about where I was going to go, Rob.
Okay.
Right. So we know that we've created a subcommittee of Steve and Brandy to start working on the restrictions that are required for this property. So members of the Valentine Committee that are here, the question to you is, based on your charge, your committee has done the work that it was charged to do. You've given us a recommendation as to how we should move forward. So do you feel that you want to stay as a committee and advise with Steve and Brandy, and then as we move this project forward at some point, which I expect we will, and be part of an advisory for that? Or do you feel that it would be best to dissolve your committee, but as individuals, you can stay involved, and depending on what we determine as our next step would be then to either create a new committee, and I personally would certainly put those of you that have been on the committee as priority to be put back on it, or you can choose not to. And I just, that's where my thinking is. And so I guess I'm going to open it up to you as committee members, based on the information that you've shared as a committee, the understanding that the first step is the restrictions that need to get put on it, that Steve and Brandy are going to be working it on. Do you feel you want to stay as a committee or work as individuals with them on that? And whoever wants to jump in first. Miles, go ahead.
Well, I think I was the one, maybe I stepped into it unknowingly, but I think Michael that managed in our last meeting, I was the one who sort of like got put in the spot out of a question of saying, well, what happens to us now?
Right.
I think, my interest is fairly lightning rodded towards mostly the barn, but the historical nature of it. So that was kind of my thinking of the committee in general when I joined. So just the way my mind works, I think that if we had a committee that was somewhat laser focused on the Valentine property aspect of things, very specifically the way we had been, I think that would be useful. That would make it easiest for me to wrap my mind around what our charter, if we want to call it that, would be going forward. In the more general sense, a lot of the legalese and stuff like that, that's well out of my realm, and my eyes glaze over very quickly when it comes to the different stipulations of what has to happen. I'm more interested in how we can work with it, with the physical structures and so forth. So my opinion would be that I would like to stay involved in a committee that I can identify has a specific charter, and that to me was the Valentine's Committee.
Okay, great. Thank you. Susan, I see you unmuted. Would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think that given that we've finished out the charter, it would make sense for us to dissolve and then kind of reorganize, and then see which individuals want to still be involved, and maybe potentially bring in some new individuals who maybe have some expertise to lend to the project.
Okay, great. Thank you. Scott?
Sure. So one of the things that's been difficult on the committee is that we haven't been able to have conversations with each other. And I was for a time on the Friends of the Charles River Trail, where we were we became a 501c, and that setup worked well for us. We were able to get a lot accomplished. Prior to that, I was on the Board of the Native Community Organic Farm, which is a public-private partnership, and that, you know, we raised a lot of money for that organization. I just feel like there's just been a lot of constraints on us as a committee. I think I would suggest maybe as a first step is that those who are interested might meet with Steve and Brandy and get their thoughts on how we can best go forward. And, you know, what form of a group of people from the community might be most helpful in terms of moving the process forward.
Okay, great, thank you. Margie, Judy, or Cedric, any feedback as to how you would like to stay involved, if at all, with this process? Margie?
I'm interested in staying involved.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
For me, the same thing. I'm interested in staying on the or like in a committee or another shape or form to help with the bringing the committee, the property, like to where it should be. I think I'll echo Scott a little bit. It was a challenging year with the COVID and everything. And we were like a relatively young committee when we started, and we just started to have a footing when we all put it on pause for, I don't know, 4 months maybe. We had a long gap when we didn't meet and when we started to meet again. So maybe we could have come up with a little bit of a different different strategy if we had meted like regularly and then all the challenge of the COVID. So.
Great. Yes, I definitely feel the frustration from your committee in regards to the COVID and not being able to meet in person. And you, as you said, Cedric, you were a new committee. You were getting to know each other. You were getting to work together. It's tough when you can't be in the same room with people.
That's the same when the things that Scott mentioned, that we really couldn't communicate outside of meetings. And
right.
I think all of us are interested in the property and are concerned for its future.
Good. Okay. So the sense that I'm getting is you all want to stay involved, but you want to have a little bit definition as to what your committee is going to be doing. So to my board, my recommendation is we don't officially dissolve it yet. But I think we need to let Steve and Brandy start doing some work, and maybe with that work, they can have an idea as to how the committee or, can support that. And then I think once the restrictions are in place, we can further discuss what's going to happen. And I know it's going to be a two-part thing where we're discussing the restrictions as well as thinking about what we want to do there. Does that make sense to the select board, that we let Brandy and Steve start doing some work? We don't dissolve the current Valentine Committee, get a little more information, and then determine what our next steps are with the committee as to how they can stay involved.
Madam Chair, sorry, Steve, before I don't have a problem with that. I think that's the right path to take. But I also would like to see those current Valentine property committee members to be part of that discussion when it comes to the restrictions that are going to be put on that.
Definitely.
So I think they should be actively involved in it, and not just listening as audience, but be actively involved in that discussion.
Well, I would leave it to Steve and Brandy to figure out how they want to work with them. Steve, go ahead. Nice and loud, Steve.
I agree, Joe. Absolutely, they should be involved. But again, they're going to be open sessions where members of certainly the committee, but members of the public can participate and this is an important project. I think we all recognize that this has such a tremendous potential to be such a great asset to the community. So I think a lot of people are invested in this, and I think we're incumbent to hear all the voices. And But, you know, the other challenge we are going to have is, besides writing the restrictions, is to find the holders for the restrictions as well. So we need to have entities out in the world that will hold those restrictions and monitor them as well. So that's going to be part of our process.
So what I almost see is the committee as part of their work, maybe Steve and Brandy, is to help you do research, or, you know, as you find stuff, let them review it as well with you, possibly. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm just, you know, something to think about.
I think the more hands, the better here.
Yep.
I think.
Okay.
I guess the only thing I'd add is that I think that's a constructive process, but I know that we've talked in the past about getting other voices involved as well. So I know that Steve and Brandy won't be limiting their input to just the committee members, and of course we all know that there are several other members of the community that with a lot of experience and knowledge and interest in this project, and I'm sure you'll get them involved as well as you go through your work.
Yeah, Michael?
Yeah, I know we want to be inclusive, and I think we want to give, for lack of a better term, equal weight to everybody that provides input to this process. But I do hope the board gives, and I don't think there's any other way to say it, a little more weight to some of the committee members, because they each bring an element of expertise and, you know, actually do a lot of work. I mean, Miles knows a lot about barns and barn construction. Margie, you know, she's passionate about open space and always maintains, you know, vigilance in regards to that with the property. Scott's got a wealth of knowledge in terms of the nonprofit world and running a nonprofit. Susie's done a ton of research and a ton of work and has become educated really quickly. Judy brings a different perspective in terms of you're an abutter, and you know, you have just a history of the property that a lot of people don't have. And then Cedric is a relatively new voice and also lives pretty close by as well. So they've each put in their time and done a lot of great work. So I hope the board factors that in when they're writing their.
If I'm just going to add, if I may, that Cedric comes to this as a ISD project manager and comes to it with a point of view that's really helpful as well. So I really value everyone on the committee. Thank you.
Okay. So I believe we know how we're moving forward at this point. Before we go, I know we have some public, and I believe you're here listening for this. I don't know if, I know we're, you know, a little bit behind, but I'd be willing to open it up if anyone who is here listening, who is not on any of the committees or the boards, would like to say anything. This is your opportunity. Robin or Cynthia? No?
Well, I guess you forced my hand there.
Well, you're
I was just sitting here minding my own business, watching, but I know there are 2 vacancies on the committee.
Yep.
And there were applications put in. I don't know how that's going to affect the committee, if they're still open, or if it's going to be standing as a 4-member committee. I think it's 4 or 5. I can't remember. I think it's 5.
There's actually 6 of them, but I think at this point, Robin, we have your form, and we thank you for volunteering. I think based on the discussion tonight, we're not going to add to the committee, but as Steve has said and Brandy has said, as they're working on this restriction, if you have input, you are going to be very welcome to participate from that perspective. You don't have to be an official committee member to give your input and to give your feedback. So I would say, you know, I know you're passionate about this because of what you've done to support this project. So I would say watch for those meetings and pay attention and give your input that way. And then once we get past that and we decide what we're going to do with the committee, we can determine, do we need to expand it or not?
Understandable.
Okay.
And the only, that's what I would like to add. If we, you know, we can't have it both ways. If we're saying the committee's role is ending, we can't then just say they have a special role in this new process. I guess that's my issue here. You know, if we really see a role for the committee now, then we also need to review what are we going to do to constitute it. So that would just be my caution as we move forward on this process.
And I'm very aware of that. Brandy, go ahead.
I would just say I agree, and I know that from my perspective, I definitely want Robin's input, and I know there's other folks in town. I think that for this next phase of this project, you know, Steve and I are going to kind of take the lead per se on the restrictions, and then include everyone from the Valentine Committee and others like Robin, and I know Carl Hackinson has a lot of expertise in this area. We will make sure that we reach out and include them in the discussion, because it's you know, and then the next phase of whatever is next for the Valentine Committee, then we can kind of define it a little bit better. I think at this point it's you know, we're really going to focus on the restrictions and, you know, get that in place, and, you know, but I know that there is quite a bit of expertise on the committee and a lot of time and effort that have been dedicated to this by so many people. So we, you know, I know that I want that input from a lot of people as well.
Okay.
Good. Is there anyone else who would like to say anything on this matter? Okay, seeing no hands raised and no people unmiking, I'm going to say thank you to the Valentine Committee for being here. Thank you for your work. Please stay involved, and we will get this resolved. We will figure out what we're going to do. Before we go, I did have a question, Michael. The CPC funds, the 125K, what bucket is that coming out of it? Is that coming out of?
It will be coming out of the historical bucket. And so actually I would ask the board if they would
vote that. Okay. If I can get a motion to approve the 125,000 coming out of the historical bucket to be put on the town meeting warrant.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Brandy. Roll call vote. Kinsman.
Aye.
Mignani.
Aye.
Mitchell.
Aye.
Shear.
Aye.
And Reeves, aye, and that passes. So that will move forward. The other thing, Michael, you said we need to appoint someone from our newly or recently constituted historical commission to CPC.
The historical commission will need to put that on a future agenda.
Future agenda. Okay. If you could make sure that gets passed on to them to be aware of that. Thank you. Okay. Again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen from the Valentine Committee. Appreciate your work. Appreciate you being here. And I look forward to hearing more about your involvement and your thoughts on the Valentine Project. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you. Stay healthy. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we are moving on. Fiscal 22 capital plan. This is going to be presented by Jen.
I'm just going to try to share my screen. Hold on 1 second. Can you guys see that?
Not yet.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. So this is going to look an awful lot like last year's presentation. We sort of followed a very similar process. Obviously, it was a little bit different virtual and remote, but at the beginning of the budget process, we sent out guidance to our department heads and asked for them to sort of take a hard look at last year's plan, make sure that anything that was built into the plan that might have been grant funded or have changed in priority level, to communicate that to the working group, the capital improvement working group, which consists of Brittany Icapone, our finance director, Doug Small, our DPW director, Chris Matthews from the school department. He has a lot of consultation with John Murray, who is the new facilities director at the schools as well. And then we send it out to all of our department heads and meet pretty regularly to discuss all of the requests. So we asked folks to look at our plan from last year and make necessary modifications, and also really to look hard at projects that perhaps are were being funded in the next 4 to 5 years to better prioritize them, but also to take a hard look at whether there's other outside funding sources that we can use to fund those projects. And each of these projects are evaluated not just by the department head, so they identify the priority, but it goes through the scoring system. So a few years back when we had the Collins Center, they laid out a pretty objective scoring method that each project goes through, and then we discuss how the score relates to the applicability for us to be able to get the project done in a fiscal year or an item purchased, item or equipment, a piece of equipment purchased during any fiscal year. And that's sort of how we lay out the priorities for this upcoming fiscal year. I think probably don't need to go over this, but quickly, it's just the definition of a capital project really has to be over 50,000. I mean, I'm sorry, over 10,000. And it has to have, these are some of the aspects that we look to when we're scoring. Really, it's about increasing efficiency. We look at whether it impacts revenue or operating budgets, how it impacts education, public safety, public health, economic growth, historic preservation, cultural and recreational opportunities, and environmental and sustainability projects. Again, we look at possible funding sources. Obviously, primarily it's going to come out of the general fund, but some of these projects are funded by our enterprise funds. We look at grant funding because obviously if that can help fund some of these projects, that's certainly a priority. And then there are some projects that we do go out for either excluded debt or general fund debt. Obviously, the last couple years, we've had some big projects, so we've made a real conscious effort not to have projects in that debt service line so that we have room for our large projects like the public safety building in Mendez. This is just a real quick look at the projects that are in our pay-as-you-go and our general fund projects. So there's about 65 projects that are programmed in the next 5 years. And primarily, you have vehicles, and that's around all of the departments. So that's police cruisers, that's DPW, that's 20-year-old ambulance and fire apparatus that goes in there. There's also facility trucks that we would purchase. And then, a quarter of the projects are really going to our facilities, maintaining them and making upgrades to our facilities. And then infrastructure is really road work, dams, bridges, and the like. And then there is some smaller for parks and obviously equipment. The way we split up our pay-as-you-go is so as part of the budget, it's $500,000 is worked into the budget, which you've looked at. I think we had these projects outlined in the budget document that you reviewed, I believe, or in the notes. And these are some of the projects. So typically the projects that we move forward to town meeting are projects that might take a longer term or need a little bit of time planning. So, we want to have them funded as soon as the fiscal year begins. And so some of those projects are engineering and bridge and dam maintenance and construction. So that's really going to be like assessing some of our bridges. Cameras for the DPW and the animal control area. Last year, we were hoping to fund a traffic signaling project that will basically re-signal and allow them to communicate to each intersection. And that was not able to be funded, so we're funding it this year. We have some radio system component projects this is for police and fire, so this is public safety. It's basically a repeater that allows them to communicate. The schools have had a very methodical carpet replacement sort of initiative over the last several years, and it will go on for a few more. So they do just a couple of classrooms in each school, and they try to work that in during obviously vacations or the summertime. And so there is some carpet replacement for the Warren School and the middle school. We have to continuously update our Chromebooks because we identified in the last couple of years that we made large purchases initially for Chromebooks. And so then we're trying to create a cycle in which where we always have new Chromebooks coming in for students, and then we can sort of recycle the older ones. They do have a lot of wear and tear. We were able to purchase a good number of Chromebooks this past year of the CARES Act, but this is sort of going to be our maintenance program so that we can make sure that we always have that technology. You will see that there's several pit-away projects for the schools. That's partly due to the fact that we tabled several of these projects that have been identified over the last several years, while the school and the Mendez Building Committee went through the feasibility study to make sure that the pit-away school was going to stay online. And so those, you'll start to see those come forth. And some of these are some safety projects like outdoor lighting and playground safety. And so they moved that ahead as a priority. And then there's some painting repair to obviously maintain that building as long as possible. And then there's a bleacher in the middle school project as well as the interior paint for the Pitaway School.
Jen and or Michael, so I'm seeing these projects for the schools. Are any of these projects that either with the CARES Act money that we still have left or other money that we're getting through some of the new programs, could they be covered for, could those monies, one-time capitals be used so that we could use this capital for other things that are not school related?
Potentially. I was going to wait to get into some of the American.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay because it's a salient question at this point in the meeting. But the short answer is we don't know yet.
Okay.
There's a lot of complexity to this ARPA fund thing.
Okay, so we could approve this, but with the understanding that if funds become available that could cover some of these capital things, we could do a swap, right?
Yeah, I think we would always allow for that type of flexibility.
Okay.
I will say that from what I am seeing with the American Rescue Plan funds, we're going to want to have a comprehensive plan
As to how to use them. Okay.
Across the whole bucket.
But on the other hand, do we have any CARES money left over specifically for schools for COVID stuff that we could use for this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think so either.
Okay.
But if, to your point though, Yolanda, so if all of a sudden, a grant came up or we were able to sort of fund one of these projects, we would certainly look to do that. We continue to look to do that. And then the way the capital plan is, we usually it's split almost 50-50. So we hold back projects in hopes that, or in anticipation that there may be free cash that we're able to use. And then we bring that to our fall town meeting. And so, several projects have been sort of teed up for that. So, for instance, we have the dog park, construct the dog park. And so, sort of a commitment from the town. I know that the dog park committee is doing a lot of fundraising. We would certainly like to take, this is the 10% required match. And so we have it programmed into the capital plan. If they are fundraise or find other grant sources, we would certainly utilize those because we have it, when we start scoring that, there is a possibility of other funding sources. Right. And so part of the score. And so we would continue to do that. We tend to sort of move some of our vehicle or equipment purchases to the fall, partly because you have a shorter window of time to utilize that funding. And so, those are purchases and usually pretty off the shelf purchases. And so, we're able to get those before the end of the fiscal year. And so you'll see, utility bodies, and that's really to help DPW to sort of prolong the life of some of their equipment, Jaws of Life, some work on the boat for the fire department. This is an additional phase of the signaling program. The pumper truck, which is also for fire, and then police cruisers and motorcycle replacement. So again, these are sort of more off the shelf.
Okay.
We have added a new project based on our ADA assessment that has, some of our smaller projects that we'll be able to do for $25,000 to start coming into compliance with some of the areas that we need a little bit of work that was identified in our assessment. And then obviously if for larger projects, we'll certainly try to go for grant funds for that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Magunko Road improvements, this was part of the initial complete streets prioritization plan. And obviously this sort of ties into some of the work that's being done for the Trolley Brook Trail. And so this would be the engineering. That's why it's only 28,000, and then it would identify what would need to be done. The schools were looking for a generator that they could use if they ever had a power outage or anything like that. Middle in the locker repairs, again, is one of these projects that they've been working on for several years, where they sort of piece together a certain number of lockers each year. They've actually re-looked at the remodeling of the kitchen in the middle school. So initially it was a complete remodel, and it was I believe it was in 90 to 100,000 was the estimate. And so they're looking at sort of remodeling it in phases, but also doing it in a much smaller project. So it actually, the total estimate, rather than being upwards of 100, is going to come in around 70 over 3 years. And so to try to look at it a little bit different. It's, again, we have a new director of facilities, and I think just sort of approach sometimes changes. The priority doesn't necessarily change, but sometimes the approach. And then Chromebooks again, so phase those in throughout the year. And then one of the large projects that's been identified is the high school track needing to be resurfaced. And so it's a pretty large project at 250,000. Right now it's sort of built in as potentially being done under debt, but what our goal is that we would hope that we would be able to do it with free cash, which is why we're waiting till the fall, and that way we don't have to borrow for an additional project.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, and that's what we did last year with the fire. There was a fire ambulance, I believe, and it was a large purchase. And we were hoping that we would be able to sort of reprioritize, look for funding elsewhere, and then be able to just use free cash so that we didn't have to have additional borrowings. And so that worked out pretty well. And that's really it for this year's presentation. We presented this to the Finance Committee at their first meeting in May, and got their feedback, and they were pretty supportive.
Is that it?
That is, yeah.
Okay, great. Any questions? Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jen, the replacement generator that you had listed up there for various schools is, I thought all the schools had current generators now. Is this an extra one? Should one of them fail, we use this as a backup? Is this a backup generator to the generators that we currently have at the schools?
So, I believe it's for one of the schools. We went out, and so this is one of the ones that we're sort of looking at on how we approach it, because we needed some generator. We were also looking for some town facilities like the community center.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that when Joe was here, they went out to bid and it came in much lower. So I think it might be a replacement for an old generator that they're concerned will not function when needed. I mean, obviously they test it all the time, and I think that it's sort of coming to its end of life, but we are sort of looking in right now, is it better to have sort of a portable generator that you could take to any one of the locations? So if we have generators and maybe they're coming to end of life, is it a better and more efficient purchase to have a portable generator? So we're also looking at that on the town, so you could use it maybe at the community center, maybe another facility, DPW, for instance. And so that's one of the approaches, but I believe it's because the generators are coming to the end of the life. And so as we're doing the annual maintenance, it was identified as a need.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Jen, thank you for that. That was very thorough and very helpful.
I have a quick question on the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandy.
Sorry. On the ADA compliance. So I assume like this is going to be something that will be part of the capital plan in pieces kind of on a yearly basis. Is there, do you know kind of, is it going to be small amounts over long periods of time, or will there potentially be opportunities to make sort of bigger investments in some of the things that they had presented to us?
Yeah, so Brandy, what we did for this first year, because we're just really working through the plan and the prioritization of the plan, and some of the findings were signage and things like that that we could do pretty quickly. And so we put a small amount in for this first year. In the next few years, we have 50,000 programmed in for each of those years, but we are eligible for I believe it's $225,000 or $250,000 grant to do a larger project for compliance. And then obviously, as we move forward in this process, if we identify something larger, we could certainly sort of name that project and work that into the capital plan as well. You know, as we sort of get more familiar with their prioritization plan for implementation purposes.
Okay.
The other thing in regards to streets and some of the ADA compliance there is we should probably look at our complete streets list that we submitted, you know, that whole plan, that 5-year plan, and make sure we are continuing to submit for the complete streets grants that are going every year, right? I mean, because those are still available, and we should probably look at extending that plan now a couple more years because we've done it a few years.
Yes.
Yeah. Michael?
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to add is sometimes we can forget also that some of these larger projects that we are doing address a number of ADA accessibility issues. So because we're focused on other aspects of the project and what they're trying to remedy. So for example, the public safety building is a great example of that's going to be an ADA compliant facility and make upgrades in handicap accessibility that maybe our current facilities don't have. Same thing with the downtown project in 126. Those are big projects, and tucked into some of that is the fact that we're going to make these areas more ADA accessible.
Right.
Madam Chair, Michael and Jen, are there federal monies available to upgrade sidewalks to make them ADA compliant? Because I know the town of Framingham was either a year or 2 years ago. They had a massive project like 135, 126 area, the downtown area, where they actually fixed all the intersections and created, ADA compliant accessibility to all those intersections and sidewalks. And it was my understanding there was some federal monies that were used in that. And I'm wondering if available that we could look to pursue.
Aren't those Gateway City money?
It could be Gateway City money. If we're talking about downtown, that might have been done through the TIP. So which technically a portion of that are federal funds, but it flows through the state. If we're talking about the same one, Joe.
Okay. Because I know it started around Waverly Street by Winthrop Street and worked it all the way down to downtown Framingham, right through to
right to the Ashland line.
Area. I'm sorry?
Well, right to the Ashland line. If you
Yeah.
if you look on 135, they have the updated sidewalks, they have the bike lanes.
Path,
Oh yeah.
Right. And that goes right up to Natick, right to the Natick line. So I'm just wondering if that, if it is that project, that's great. But I was just wondering if there was another program available.
Okay.
So, hey, he's not in the dark anymore.
Okay. Is there anything else on the capital plan? Any other questions, comments? No. Okay. So we are moving into, we've done A, B, and C of our old and new business. So we're moving into the review of the BAA grant submissions. Rather than going through our regular process because of how things have been going on, we've had some of these. So I felt it best. It's not that many. Susan, I would just ask if you could tell us what our balance is, because I don't know that I saw that in the packet. And if it was there, I apologize that I didn't see it yet.
Okay, I do have the balance. So
Okay.
for the runner's account, it's $8,526. For the selectman's gift account, it's $85,175.
Okay. Okay, so we have 6 proposals before us. Let's review these, and then we can probably just do it all at once. But Steve, do you have comments or questions? Go ahead.
This could be consistent with what Rob and I have done in the past with reviewing and then recommending to the board and subsequent board approving. The only modification I would make here would be to the youth basketball and the youth lacrosse. And I would recommend that we fund those at $1,000 each, which is typically what we've done.
Okay.
And again, we're looking to, support their programs, not fully fund. I mean, they do work by subscription. So that would be my only comment. Other
Okay.
than that, I think everything else sounds and looks reasonable in terms of what's being presented.
What about the Ashland Sporting Association
Good.
and the 3,900?
Well, we can let Steve Greenberg speak to that, but it sounds like it's, kind of architectural work in preparation for, some renovations, which it seems to me it's needed, but, let Steve speak to it.
Thank you, Steve. But before I open it up, everybody good with the process?
Yes.
Okay, good.
One
Steve,
question I had though is,
hold on, Steve. Go ahead, Brandy.
so Susan had just given us the numbers for the runner's account and the select board account, the gift account. So the runners that are running for us in October, they're still fundraising, I assume at this point. So would we be then moving the money, any grants that we would give from the select board account at this point, correct?
Well, we have 8526 in the runners account, which is where we do a lot of these from. So we can decide how we want to do that. Sorry, I'm looking for a calculator on my phone.
I didn't add them all up, but I just.
No, I didn't either. That's why I'm pulling up my calculator. So, we also want to look at, what these entities are and how we want to fund them. So,
A little over 11,000, give or take $50. Off the top of my head, using old math.
not new math.
No.
Okay, Steve, go ahead and talk to us about the Sporting Association's request.
Thank you, Londa. I was fortunate to get on the agenda for the Community Preservation Act Committee last month, just to sort of get a feel for their thoughts on making some improvements to amenities and additions and more storytelling about Marathon Park. And I was very encouraged, which prompted me to have a conversation with Jen, and I sent her a letter. And the letter sort of encompassed the ideas that we're considering. But like anything, for it to come off right, I think we need a plan. And I've had some conversations with landscape architects. So the request is for up to 3,900 to retain a landscape architect to develop specific plans and costs for development of amenities, some improvements, some repairs, and more work, more storyboards, maybe some bike racks, some more seating, just a general overall plan. Steve Mitchell and I talked years ago about making certain improvements to the crosswalk, and it was tough finding the technology for that. There's a gentleman in Framingham who has some new technology that is somewhat sustainable, and we're considering that as part of the plan. But I keep saying the word plan. That's what we want to do, is develop a plan with a landscape architect so we can present an overall picture and request some historic funds and other funds from the CPC to make it happen.
Didn't we recently update that crosswalk?
Talking about, I think.
Well, it's kind of at a funky angle, so
Hold on, what was that?
I have spoken
Wait,
about
hold on,
small
Steve
briefly.
Mitchell, what was that?
What Steve was referring to, we had a conversation several years ago about, how could we make the original start line more permanent?
Okay.
That's what we're talking
Okay, that's okay. That makes sense. Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? So yeah, Joe, to your point, it is a little over the 8,500 that's in our runner's account. I'm wondering, I'm just going to throw out an idea. If we want to do the ones that are sports related from the runner's account, and then the other ones from our gift account. Does that make sense? So I would recommend Ashland Youth Baseball for $1,000, Ashland Youth Lacrosse for $1,000, and Ashland Sporting Association for $3,900. Those would come from the runner's account.
Okay.
That works.
So moved.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make
Second.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a
Sure.
motion in a second. Okay, all those in favor of that motion and second, that those three organizations amounts would come from the runner's account. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell, Scher,
Aye.
and Greaves. Aye. That passes 5-0. And then I would recommend that the deferred grant payment for Green Up Ashland, the Ashland Day Committee, and WACA-TV in the amounts listed would come from our Selectmen gift account.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Brandy, you're,
The only other question I had is with the Ashland Sporting Association, we would put that in there too, or is that separate?
that one under the gift, the
Runner's account.
Oh, okay.
one under, that was part of the runner's account because it's sports related. It's historic for the marathon. I think that's appropriate from there. Yes, and then the other three. Susan, the one question from the Green Up Ashland, because it's a deferred payment, is that a new amount or has that amount been taken out from our balances?
No, it was not taken out from your balance because it was never extended. So
Okay.
it's still showing there.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second for Green Up Ashland, Ashland Day Committee, and WACA-TV to come out of our Selectmen gift account. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell,
Aye.
Shearer,
Aye.
and Greaves. Aye, and that also passes 5-0. Thank you all. Thank you to the runners who supply that. And my hope is that come the fall, we can go back to our regular process.
That would be nice. So is my understanding this is the 125th running of the Boston Marathon? Is that right?
Coming up in the fall, I believe so.
Up in the fall?
Yep.
So is this something that we want to, get the park spruced up so when people come to in droves to see the original stain line, we'll have a nice location for them to come and look at?
That is part of it, Joe. And actually, I'm not sure how much we celebrate this, but in 2023, it'll be 100 years since the race was run in Ashland. I don't know if that's something we want to promote. That we
That's something to promote. That's okay.
yeah. It's there's a couple of big anniversaries coming up, and I think in my letter to Jen, I said that there's a lot more of the story to be told, and special thanks to Steve Flynn, who is the author of everything you read over there at Marathon Park, and he's got a lot more material he wants to put out. Metcalf Mill's a big part of it, and more of the story there. And there's some interesting stuff too that I think people be interested in learning about. And all the kids go over there as part of the curriculum. So, but there are some big anniversaries coming up. To answer your question, Joe. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Stephen.
The schools do a lot with the marathon. So I think if they knew of these, special anniversaries, I think that would be something for them to definitely want to celebrate.
And I know at one time we talked about getting a more permanent starting line location. I know Steve, both Steves had discussed this, and I had mentioned it to Steve a while back, Steve Greenberg, that a brick starting line to go right across the roadway, embedded into the roadway may not be a bad idea. So that way it doesn't, you don't have to keep painting it over and over again. And it's something that people know where it's at.
Yeah, it's selling Doug Small in that idea, Joe. We talked about brick, we talked about cobblestones.
Yeah.
It's just that, just tires alone. There's a lot of traffic on Pleasant Street.
Yeah.
Just the tires alone do a job. But this is a pretty unique process, and I'll share it with the board once we've gone a little further down the road as to what it might look like and what's involved. But I think it's not something that's going to last forever, but there's still remnants of the paint job we did 8 or 9 years ago. But this is a more semi-permanent solution. I think you'll like it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Steve. See you tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
Bring Jack LeDuc out of retirement, Joe, and have him paint the line.
I'm going out with dinner him on Friday night. I'll ask him if he want to do it for us.
Sure, we
Come up
can
with a nice
convince him.
stencil.
I'm sure we can convince him.
I'm sure.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you to the board. Thank you, Jen. Everybody else, appreciate it. Have a good night.
You.
Good
You too.
night. And just everyone reminder that with the WACA-TV, that was for their movie nights, which will be happening on August 13th. Raiders of the Lost Ark at the corner spot. That'll be fun. That's a good one. Okay. Moving on, we did the rail transit district. Let's go on to downtown. Michael.
All right, so some of you might have seen some activity over on Front Street and Main Street this week. They're going over really a lot of the field revisions before breaking ground. We expect next week that starting on May 24th, they're going to be focusing on the water connections and making sure that there's going to be connection. Each of the businesses and residences have connections to water as we continue to do this work, similar to what happened when we were replacing the water lines. So there will be some intermittent shutoffs for the next 3 weeks, and we'll be sure to notify everybody when and for how long their businesses or their residences will be affected. So that's really the main thing I want to get across with regards to downtown right now.
Okay.
You have several hairdressers that are down that area, and water is an important part of their business. So we have to make sure that they are definitely notified way in advance.
Yeah, and we're trying to keep the shut off to a minimum,
Yeah.
Joe, so there's not that much time that they lose.
I mean, I don't have to worry about my hair, but there are others.
You and me both, Joe. You and me both. So, okay, moving on to the next one. Right now, we have on a Warren District update.
Oh, before you get started on that, can I just ask a question? Just what's the update on the quiet zone in downtown? That it's not going to be coordinated, or what's the latest on the quiet zone implementation?
So if you recall, we went ahead and did the engineering necessary to get it on the transportation improvement program.
Yes.
And it's currently scheduled for 2024 on the tip. I believe it's at 1.3 million, but we did coordinate that, well, at least the design, I should say, with the downtown design. So there shouldn't be any conflicts there. The main upgrade that's going to happen with regards to the quiet zone is going to be at Cherry Street.
And Michael, did you follow up that information I had sent you? Have we done what we need to in regards to any paperwork or permitting or anything like that to make sure that when the engineering and the construction happens, we can actually declare a quiet zone?
I'm still confirming that because
Okay.
we depended on Stantec to do the engineering firm to do some work on our behalf. So just want to make sure that I've got accurate information before moving forward.
Yeah, I actually had a resident reach out directly to me about it. So go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, and Yolanda and Michael. So does it look good in terms of the tip? Is it like
We're on for 2024. We're still sitting there. So
yeah. And generally that seems to work out more often than not in terms of actually happening.
I mean,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
that's why the when the last revision came out, I double checked it. Now it was a little confusing because typically they put Boston and then the community and then the information, and for some reason they left the word Ashland off, so you had to actually look in the detail. But we are still on the tip, and I know I personally will keep following it to make sure we stay there.
Great.
Great. Warren
Okay,
District.
thank you.
Michael.
So the Warren District we had on here to authorize the purchase and sale. Lisa Mead, Attorney Mead, did not have a chance to go ahead and give the okay on that. And generally what we do is we'll go ahead and authorize the chair to sign contingent upon town council's review. But considering this is a little bit of a different purchase and sale and incorporates the preservation restriction. Really thought the board should have a chance to review all of that after town council reviews and before making a decision. So I'm going to pull that from this agenda.
Yeah, we decided to push it out. Hopefully then we'll have it from Lisa. Okay, Route 126.
With regards to Route 126 and the construction, so Northern Construction is going to continue the road work between the Holliston and Ashland Town Line and Elliott Street. Meanwhile, Eversource Gas and their contractor Ymca Construction, they're going to complete the gas main work between Algonquin and Nickerson Road. I believe that was supposed to happen today. And then they will go down to 2 crews. One crew is going to work towards the Framingham end, and then the second crew will work towards the intersection of Pond and Elliott. A lot of this work will be done during the day. If you recall, there were Eversource came before, and Doug actually came before the board to talk about maybe doing some night work, and there were some adjustments to that request. But right now we have the work hours from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay. And have we gotten a detailed schedule or a closer schedule from the state?
No, but we do have a contact if
Okay.
if there's somebody, or if someone would like to speak to somebody at the state.
Okay.
Talk about if their property is going to be affected. We do have the email address and the name of the person that they should reach out to. And we'll find a way to get that out to everybody.
I would say maybe in your email, Michael.
We'll do that in
Weekly email, say, if you have issues and you need to talk to someone because of property, here's the person.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's included in our construction updates.
That too, yeah.
Mhm.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, moving into our town manager report.
So I'll start with COVID vaccinations. Our clinic continues to run very well and become a model for really the state, not just for the region. Currently, we have the data that we have as of 5/13, so May 13th, about 6 days ago. The total residents in Ashland that have had at least 1 dose of vaccine come to 12,678. And then the number of residents that are fully vaccinated is 9,167. So we're beyond 50% of residents that are totally vaccinated now. The state has opened it up to younger kids, younger than 16. And so we ran a clinic recently for that, and that was very, very successful. But, we're doing actually, I think 1,000 doses a day at this clinic.
Still?
Yeah, which is pretty remarkable considering, we're a little small town 7-member coalition.
That's
That's great. Great to hear.
I'm going tomorrow, so for his, so I'm excited. I'll be very excited when he's vaccinated.
Awesome.
Imagine.
So we, the next item is we're actually going to be having this Meet Your Neighbor event on this coming Friday, May 21st at the Corner Spot. And it's going to be an opportunity for everybody to, get together, kind of celebrate, if you will, the end of the pandemic, start rebuilding some of that social fabric that we unfortunately have lost as a community as this pandemic has just kind of raged on. Everybody has individual stories that they can say about how this has affected them and their social life. But hopefully we'll be emerging out of it, and this event at the Corner Spot will be the first one, really kind of the kickoff to that.
Michael, question on that. So Zealous is going to be here this weekend, correct? Right? Or is it next weekend?
It's this weekend.
Okay. So the restrictions for having to have food while you have alcohol, has that lifted yet, or is that not until the 29th?
I believe that's not until the 29th, Yolanda.
Okay. So they'll have to be aware of it this time. And are we asking people to RSVP at all for the event this Friday?
We're not asking people to RSVP. I should say it starts at 5 p.m.
Right.
I neglected to say that. But I do believe there is an event set up on Facebook where people can indicate if they're interested or if they're going.
Okay, because And are we prepared if there's a lot of people, what we're gonna do?
We're always prepared. So
Okay,
if we have that kind of problem, we'll definitely find.
okay, good. I just want us to be prepared because I know I've been publicizing it and, you know, Ashley's been doing a great job publicizing it. So, okay.
In line with this, another thing that Ashley has been working on is basically a video introducing the community to some of our local town hall employees and some of the departments and what they do. And so that is now published on our YouTube page, the Town of Ashland's YouTube page. Again, it's just really a brief introduction to some of the people working here in Town Hall and DPW. And, you know, everybody kind of realizes generally what police and fire do, but some of the other departments, people don't really know exactly what those departments do and what they're responsible for. It also allows people to put faces with names. So hopefully it reduces any kind of intimidation factor. Not that, you know, I think town hall is an intimidating place, but some people do, for people, and hopefully allow them to get a little bit more engaged. So I want to thank Ashley and Beth for putting both of these things together.
Great. Okay. Joe?
Motion to go over 10 o'clock.
Okay. If I can get a second.
Second.
Like, I understand you
It
don't want
almost
to.
worked.
So,
It
you know,
almost worked.
You know, we could not go past 10 o'clock, but then we, you know, no board reports. Anyway, I have a motion and a second to go past 10 o'clock. Kinsman,
Aye.
Mignani,
Aye.
Mitchell, Shear,
Aye.
and Greaves. Aye. We can go past 10 o'clock.
So many reluctant eyes. So the last two items on the agenda are really intermingled. First, I'm actually going to start with the FY22 budget and specifically the trash budget. Hopefully, all of the board members got a packet of information later today that I sent regarding our trash budget. The bottom line is that we are not bringing in enough revenue to cover the expenses, despite the fact that we have a really good contract in terms of controlling our expenses. We have been having to utilize retained earnings for the last couple of years to help balance that budget. And so we're at the place now where we could continue to do that for maybe a maximum of 2 years. We're looking at options, and Brittany and Doug and Dave Miller have really been involved in collecting a lot of information and gathering that. I'm not necessarily, this goes into the American Rescue Plan discussion as well. I'm not necessarily sure we're going to be able to utilize American Rescue Plan funds to make up the gap. So we'll need to make a decision as to what we're going to do in terms of raising.
A question to that, Michael. Why? I mean, if we're selling the bags because there's more trash, wouldn't that help offset that fee? Or are people not using the bags and Waste Management still getting rid of the trash at our expense?
That's so they aren't using as much in terms of the bags. It's not keeping up with the increase in costs, usage of the bags, which is on one hand, it's actually a good thing because it means that people are recycling more. The double whammy there is that we're paying significantly more for recycling.
Right. It was interesting, Joe, as a way to think about it is when we did this and we did the pay as you throw, right? You bought the bags, and for a while people were using more bags. And then as they increased their recycling, and certainly with the larger recycle carts,
right,
we're not getting as much revenue from the bags. So really increasing the fee is paying for the increase in recycle costs. Right. I wouldn't want to increase the price of the bags. I mean, that's, they're not, that doesn't make sense, but where we're hearing and having the expense is because of the recycle.
It's costing more to recycle than it is.
It's costing us more to recycle. It's not the actual trash fee that's going up. It's the recycling that's going up.
Yeah, we used to get paid to per ton to recycle. now we actually have to pay a disposal cost, so it's
Right.
flipped upside down. And Doug and Brittany and I also agree with you that raising the bag is not really a good option. They're a hassle anyway. It's difficult to justify that increase, but
Well, why is that? I think we should, I don't know, I think we should explore that at least a little bit.
okay.
Yeah.
Rob, it's
What
not-
was the analysis, Michael, when you guys decided?
Well,
yeah,
nobody's decided.
So we want to incentivize people to recycle, right? So still, I presume, but is it too expensive to do that? I guess I'm just.
Those are all.
Wondering what are the numbers with the bags? I forget how much we even pay for bags, but what kind of analysis was done before we dismissed the bag revenue?
So Rob, you haven't had a chance to review it because I know you've been traveling, but I sent something out today which has a lot of analysis and a lot
No,
of.
I saw that. No, I read that. I asked you a question. I emailed you back. You probably didn't see it. I asked about the relationship to bag revenue to this, and also the role of the sustainability committee in looking at our waste stream and actions we maybe should be taking. That's all.
Yeah.
So I mean, just that's my, before we dismiss the bag revenue, I just like to see some. I didn't see any analysis of the bag revenue in what you sent out today.
Okay.
Maybe it was in there, but I didn't see it.
All right.
Didn't we talk at some point, I don't know, quite a while ago about the double barrel system?
We did.
What is that part of this analysis, and how does that work into a potential solution?
There's an expense associated with that because they have to change the trucks and they have to do the configuration of their service offering would need to change. I like the idea of that barrel system with actually an overflow type of option. I don't think Doug or David are very excited about that for a number of different reasons, and I'll consult with them more about it. But it's going to be expensive. It's going to be expensive.
So
The double barrel system. I don't know what's
Hold
that.
on.
Where
You have a trash and a recycle barrel that's supplied by the town.
Okay.
I mean, one
Brand-
thing we talked about was going to every other week recycling. That just seems to discourage recycling as well.
So,
Brandy?
I haven't had a chance to look at what you sent today, Michael. It's just been kind of that kind of a day. But, I think about this in a couple ways. Like one, we're encouraging people to join the composting program, which is going to decrease the bags as well. So, I'm thinking, that's not going to, even if we would increase the bag costs, if we're trying to decrease bags overall and encourage composting, it's not going to kind of get us to where we need to go. Do we also know what other, have we benchmarked what other towns charge for the same services? Because I'm curious, I know we haven't changed our prices in years and
Actually, so the bag fees, according to Doug and Dave, are expensive compared to other communities. Our base fee is really not that bad, and there's actually a more detailed comparison in that packet that I sent. One of the things that we're trying to balance is it's not just the disposal costs that we're trying to manage and pay for, which is a variable cost based on how much goes into the waste stream. But there are also fixed costs as well related to the operation and the trucks and the fuel and things of that nature, which have escalated as well. And you're right, we have not raised, I don't think we've raised bag fees. I'm not aware of the last time we raised them, but actually, since I've been here, we haven't raised the base trash fee. We actually lowered it by like $7 after we renegotiated the contract. It's not an enviable position, and certainly not something I'm going to asking the board to make a decision on tonight. But I did just want to bring it up and bring your awareness to it and to the packet, and hopefully.
Yeah, and as I've said,
Go hold on, Rob. It looks like people want some more information. So why don't we all, if there's more data that you want from Michael, why don't you go ahead and tell him that? So when we look
Sure.
at this at our next meeting, we have some more data to work with.
And I like that, I know it's difficult when you're looking at these contracts, but is there a way of looking at this from a bigger picture, like bring the sustainability committee in and look at what people are throwing out, or maybe what we should be doing in terms of the recycling stream? And, we did the plastic bag ban. I don't remember, is that back? When's that going back into effect? Are we thinking about that, or?
It's already back.
Did we put it back in? Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So, maybe there's other steps we should be taking to look at the waste stream locally. That's all.
Yeah. I will say that I think, at least from the State Department of Environmental Protection, they really like the program that we run and actually use it as a model for other communities. I don't know if that factors into your thought process, but I think it's certainly something to consider.
Maybe the state, if they use.
And Michael,
Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to ask, what's the status of the current contract? Are we renegotiating it? Is it in place for?
So it will be expiring next year. So have Doug and David and Brittany and I have had initial talks with Waste Management, because they certainly would like to go ahead and extend that contract. On the other hand, we have to do what's most beneficial for the town.
Sure.
And so going out to bid might be the best way to go. I think it all depends on what Waste Management is able to do in terms of contract.
One thing, all right. And one thing I hear about is the large item stuff, and how that's working or not working. It seems a little cumbersome of a process, but
I've heard good comments, good feedback about it. I'm sure I know I'm not hearing from everybody, so I'm sure there's maybe some frustration with it and some of the limitations according to it. I think in terms of the cumbersomeness of it, you make a phone call, you schedule a pickup. It seems to be relatively painless, or at least that's the feedback that I've been given. The other thing is, if people have problems, they should call Dave Miller.
Dave.
Yeah, runs our program. Dave is very customer service friendly, and if they missed a pickup or a bulky pickup or something like that, he makes sure that they come back and take care of it. The bulk, disposal costs for bulk items has gone way up. In terms of for Waste Management to dispose it. One of those things you can't keep from being passed on directly or significantly to the consumer, but you try to limit it.
So this may be in the packet, and I apologize if it is, but do you have a sense of I know that there's been, this is not an Ashland problem. It's a United States problem with recycling, because basically China's no longer buying our recycling, which is
right.
The issue is disposal and recycling. So do we have a sense of what the cost increase has been, like the actual percentage jump? Because I think having that in a sort of context as to what the cost really has changed, because I think, back to the conversation we were having, we haven't changed this base rate, but the recycling costs may have gone up 300% or something crazy like that.
We can certainly get that, what it costs us, Brandy. We could certainly do that.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's important.
Okay. But anyway, we'll have to put that on the front burner at some point in the future. I do want to talk about American Rescue Plan funds, and just so the Department of Treasury has issued what they call an interim rule about how these funds can be utilized. I'll just give you what the timeline is right now. So they're looking to get feedback from organizations like the Government Finance Officers Association by early to mid-July. They're going to take that feedback and incorporate it into a final rule. But they have issued some interim guidance, and which outlines what some of the limitations are. And we can use this for a number of different reasons, but it's not going to be a free-for-all. The first thing I'm going to go to is we can use these funds to replace lost public sector revenue. But what they're doing is they're going to put in place a formula on how you determine what that lost revenue is. So we'll have to establish a baseline, then we'll have to establish a growth factor, which is going to be potentially the average of some years past growth, or 4.1% is the number that they're using now, whichever is greater. So it's going to be, like I said, it's not going to be like, oh, you can use this to plug in the trash, take care of the trash program, because we're not necessarily losing revenue there. On the other hand, things like our field enterprise fund, where we have actually seen a significant loss in revenue, that seems like that will be an eligible use. And again, we'll have to start working on the calculations, which Brittany is, to determine exactly what's going to be available for, let's just say, general budget purposes. But there's a lot of ambiguity to it. I mean, do you include enterprise funds? Do you not include enterprise funds? There's just a lot of complexity to it. Rob, you're probably seeing some of this in the organization too, because I'm sure there's something flow down to
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But we can
how
also
to use the funds. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the MMA is, I registered for, I was just going to say, I registered for a thing with MMA about the same subject matter, about how to use the ARPA funds. So
good.
Hopefully that'll cast some light on things as well.
Yeah, and MAPC is in the process of reviewing it, and hopefully we'll have a one-page document with cliff notes. That's what we've asked them for.
Cool.
We can use it to address some of the negative economic impacts in the community. So, we can provide homeowner assistance. We could support small businesses similar to programs that we've offered before. It also has an equity component to it. So funds will, one of the allowable uses is to help close some of those disparities that we might see, between or within a community. I've already talked about the lost revenue section. We've talked about investing in water and sewer infrastructure. That seems relatively broad. Speaking of broadband is another, broadband infrastructure is another use. But, that's pretty much the gist of it. What I think we're going to need to do is, first thing we have to do is we have to get the funds. Which seems like it's going to be a relatively easy process. Metropolitan communities, those that receive entitlement funds, they're eligible to apply for funds now. Communities like Ashland, we will receive them directly through the state. I know the state has already put in their application for it, and that's based on a formula. Once we have that, we can then determine how much that we would be able to utilize to, again, replace lost revenue, or I'll just say use for general budget purposes. And I think we would have that number. And then at that point, I think we really need to look at developing a plan on how we're going to spend this, a holistic, a comprehensive plan, because I think, I think there's going to be a lot of people and a lot of organizations and a lot of ideas on how to use this money. And I think we need to really take a step back and figure out, it's a significant chunk of money. How are we going to spend it to the best effect for people here, people and businesses here? So I don't know exactly what that looks like yet. We're just going to try to get the fund. But I do anticipate, like I said, I don't think we're going to take this piecemeal. I think we're going to try to do a broad picture as to how we're going to use this. And if you have no questions, that is it for me for tonight.
Okay. There's nothing else on the budget. Board reports. We'll start with Brandy. I think I started with Rob last time. Brandy?
Okay. I saw an email from Beth Reynolds earlier this week, and some exciting news that 11 Ashland businesses were able to receive grants through the technical marketing assistance grant program that she was leading through with Ashland, Framingham, and Natick. So I think that is fantastic that 11 Ashland businesses will be able to be helped with social media, email, marketing. I think that's a fantastic program. So I just wanted to congratulate those 11 businesses that do that. So one of the things that, I've been really busy with this housing production plan. We had our last meeting last week, and we've been pulling all this together. And tonight, when we were all talking about it, one of the things that occurred to me is that, Joe and the folks on the Affordable Housing Trust are working hard to support affordable housing. We are, as a board, supporting affordable housing. And I was thinking that at some point, not maybe our next meeting or not maybe even the meeting after, but once we kind of start getting this inclusionary zoning bylaw drafted, maybe it makes sense for us to have a joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust. I think, we kind of all need to be on the same page. I'd like, I can have a conversation with Joe and hear about what they're doing, but I think it may make sense for us to have a public meeting and have the Affordable Housing Trust kind of go through how many deed restricted housing units they have and what their process looks like, what resources they have available, what they would like. Because I think as we start figuring out where to best implement this housing production plan, I think maybe we all kind of need to be on the same page a little bit, because I feel like it's a big issue. We need to make sure that we keep affordable housing in Ashland, and if there's grants that we're going to be eligible to be able to receive, we should all be kind of moving in the same direction. So I was just thinking about that tonight and thinking that, it may make sense for us to really start that conversation as two full boards versus one-off conversations. So I wanted to throw that out there just as an idea to put on a future agenda possibly.
I would include the planning board in that discussion, right? Because we can talk about affordable housing, and the Affordable Housing Trust can talk about affordable housing, but a lot of times how we add affordable housing is developers that are coming before the planning board. So it's a larger discussion than, I think what you're talking about makes sense, but I would want to invite the planning board for that discussion as well.
And I agree with that, Yolanda and Brandy. I know we've had this discussion offline, but one of the things that Trish Kendall brought up was that when a developer comes into town in front of the planning board, what the planning board tells them, what they would like to see done, carries more weight than a development agreement from the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
To some degree, because they could tell them, we would like to see 25% affordable. The planning board could do that if they wish to do so, but they don't. And I'm kind of curious.
That's why I'm saying the planning board has to be part of our discussion.
No, absolutely, and that's what I was alluding to. You're absolutely right. And this is a discussion that we're going to have tomorrow afternoon as part of a Affordable Housing Trust meeting, with respect to Habitat of Humanity and other issues that are coming up. But the big problem with this, Brandy, is that finding a developer when we would put out an RFP for a project, getting something back that was doable for them, profitable for them, just wasn't happening. Just was not happening. Now, you know, where COVID comes into play right now, I'm sure people are hurting for work. Maybe this would be a prime time to do it, like we did with the public safety building and with the Mendez School building. But who's to say? I don't know. Well, that discussion will be
So
tomorrow.
discussion for another night.
Yep.
Okay.
So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, yep. Other updates, Brandy?
And the only other thing I wanted to say is something a little fun. On the 28th, I'm going to be part of the Ashland High School Reality Fair. I am going to be a booth captain for the charitable community service group, and I have a phenomenal team, including Mr. Herbert, Miss Emberly, and Heidi Kaufman from the YMCA. So it's going to be a fun day. I'm excited to be there. The kids are going to be going through and learning about having a budget and what they can allocate and how much money is going to be taken up by things like rent and transportation and cell phones and electricity and literally everything. So
I'll be sitting there as well, Brandy. I'm in the finance team to help them review their budgets.
So
they're all going to learn that they can't afford to live in Ashland.
That's not actually funny. Okay.
No, it isn't. It's sad.
Joe.
Thank you. Tomorrow afternoon, Affordable Housing Trust meeting at 3:00. You're all welcome to come to attend and visit the Zoom meeting. I just want to thank the HPP group for doing a great job. It's a lot of work, long hours, and I appreciate all the time and effort and dedication to that. With just one quick note of for good things, we are finishing up securing 4 concerts over the summer. This is a slow start, even though, lifting everything. There's still a lot of people out there that are still very concerned about the restrictions and this and that. So we're going to start out with 4 concerts this summer, and hopefully we'll continue. We've already voted not to do Ashland Day because it's just going to be a total nightmare as far as I'm concerned, because we should have been planning 3 months ago. But we couldn't, and so we won't be doing that this year. So with that, I just want to say thank you. And Memorial Day, we're not meeting until after Memorial Day. And I don't know if the town is doing anything. I haven't seen or heard anything from the VFW. I know the American Legion has been disbanded. They're gone. But I'm just, I just want to let everybody remember that take a few minutes out of the time on Memorial Day to remember those who gave the ultimate sacrifice so we can do what we do here on a daily basis and have freedoms that a lot of countries don't have. So that's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Good, thank you. So just a couple things. I think I may have mentioned this at our last meeting, but the Farmers Market Board of Directors has been working diligently to prepare for our June the 12th opening day. And with all of these changes, we are planning to change accordingly. And, having conversations with our COVID director and with the Board of Health, we're essentially going to be a normal market. We plan to have community service tent as required. We plan to have music every week at this point.
Nice.
We are exploring the possibility of having ready-to-eat food at the market. We're waiting to hear. We're working on that. We don't have that finalized as yet, but we are working on that. The only concern that we have is because children under a certain age are not vaccinated. We don't know when they're going to be vaccinated. We're not going to incorporate our traditional kids corner events there, just for that precaution. But otherwise, it's, we hope to have really this is our 10th year. We're going to have a 10-year celebration at some point in the season. So, that's moving along really quickly. So that's good. And then my last thing is we started to talk about this earlier about the state of emergency ending on June the 15th. There's a couple of big things. Actually, the first order that the governor came out with was suspending, certain provisions of the open meeting law. And then there's been just a series of orders that he came out with. Order number 50 has to do with the extension of outdoor dining provisions. Now, that's going to expire on June the 15th. And it seems like that's one of the more successful, I guess, positive outcomes from COVID was this expanded outdoor footprint that I think everybody has embraced, restaurants and customers alike. Now, I had a short conversation with Senator Spilka the other day, and this is kind of dumped on their lap now because rescinding the emergency state of emergency now, in essence, makes them responsible for changing laws, changing legislation. So it'll be interesting to see what they do and how quickly they do it, because as of the 15th, all those things are gone.
I believe there's a 60-day grace period. I could be wrong, but I think certain things, it's 60 days past the end of the emergency declaration. But we'll make sure that for our first meeting in June, we have all this information as much as possible, so that if there's anything that we need to do that to change anything, we can.
Yeah, I'd like to see, certainly the town take the lead in terms of a number of these issues, particularly the outdoor dining and then the alcohol serving as well in outdoor settings. So that's my tune tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob?
All right. Oh, thanks. Yeah, not too much. As you know, I've been on vacation, and there's this campaign been going on and a few other things. So one thing I wanted to mention, we all, I think, got that email about the Girl Scout camp, and it reminded me, one of the issues that we've been talking about for a long time is use of other town properties and finishing a strategic plan. One of the things that came up during the campaign is a lack of a comprehensive plan. So, I just wanted to mention we should be moving forward with some of these others. I know there's a ton of things going on, but especially some of these other properties, like we don't really have a process in place for dealing with a proposal like this. So, so I just wanted to lay that out there again, that we should really be trying to focus, especially the Girl Scout camp is such a gem. What's the plan for that? Where are we going with it? And maybe think about a process for that property in and of itself. That's what kind of brought to mind when I read that email. This was, someone had a proposal for us, but we really are not in a position to even, engage in a process as far as I could tell at this point. So I just wanted to throw that thought out there. And, second of all, in terms of, I just wanted to thank people for returning me for another term, and I'm looking forward to another 3 years of serving on the board. So thank you, the residents of Ashland.
Great.
I'll keep that short. So thank you all.
Thank you, Rob. Okay. A couple things. So I'm on the board for the Metro West Conference for Women. It's an annual conference that happens in September. And tomorrow night, we're having our first open meeting. So people that are interested and want to give some input, you can sign up for the newsletter and you'll get a link as to the open meeting tomorrow night from 6:30 to 8. I too want to thank the voters for my reelection. I look forward to 3 more years working with, at least for the next year, with all of you. And I would say that we should look at a calendar for a retreat. I think now that pandemic is lifting, there's a lot of things that we should be looking at and determining what's priority. So we did have our initial conversation back in the spring about projects and how we want to move certain things along. So I think we need to look at doing that. And I would say we can schedule one in person. So
sounds good.
Great. On that note, I believe that's everything on our agenda. If I can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Joe. Kinsman?
Second.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Yanni?
Aye.
We got to vote out. Mitchell is
Out.
waving his hand.
Good
Sheer.
night.
And Breeze,
Aye.
aye. Thank you all for watching and listening to this meeting of the Select Board. We will hopefully get back to in-person meeting and figuring out how we can still do it safely and include all of you. Thank you for watching. this select board meeting for this evening. Have a great night. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we'll see you on the 21st. Bye.
All right, great.
Good
Thank
night,
you.